They threw me into the cell at Jingzhou City First Prison. The guard shoved me through the door, and it slammed shut behind me. There were 12 of us in that cell. A big guy with stubble, they called him Brother Jian, asked me what I was in for. I ignored him and sat down on the bedboard. That didn't go over well. A skinny, rat-faced guy they called Monkey got in my face and shoved me. When he tried to slap me, I kicked him in the gut before his hand reached my face. He dropped to his knees, groaning. That set the whole cell off. Brother Jian ordered everyone to jump me. I fought back, but 10 against 1 isn't a fair fight. They beat me to the ground. Blood was running down my face. Brother Jian grabbed me by the neck, lifted me up, and told me I'd eat whatever he told me to eat in this block. I smiled at him with blood all over my teeth and head-butted him right on the nose. He went down holding his face, blood and tears pouring out. That only made things worse. The rest of them kicked and punched me until I was about to black out. The guards finally showed up. Everyone squatted down with their hands on their heads. The guards saw me lying on the floor like a puddle of mud and knew exactly what happened. Brother Jian, his real name was Zhang Jian, tried to play the victim, showing off his bloody nose, but the guard wasn't buying it. They cuffed his right hand to a hot water pipe above the door, so he had to stand on his tiptoes. That's how they punish troublemakers here. They took me to the infirmary. My nose had stopped bleeding, but half my face was swollen and one eye was turning purple. The medic said it was all soft tissue damage, nothing broken, and gave me some pills. I swallowed them dry without water. When they brought me back, Zhang Jian was still hanging by the door. He smiled coldly and said he'd be waiting for me. I didn't respond. Dinner was 2 corn buns, a chunk of pickled radish, and a bowl of cabbage boiled in salt water. I ate it all without tasting it. At night I got the bed closest to the toilet. The stink didn't bother me. I closed my eyes, but then I heard shuffling in the dark. Before I could react, they threw a blanket over my head and started hitting me from every side. Zhang Jian and his crew had planned it. Wait until I fell asleep, cover me up, and beat me again. They finally stopped hitting me after a few minutes. Zhang Jian crouched down and told me this wasn't over. We'd keep playing tomorrow. I couldn't even respond. My whole body was screaming with pain and my head was spinning. Sometime in the middle of the night, I managed to pull myself up. The cell was quiet. Everyone was asleep. I walked barefoot to Zhang Jian's bed, the second one from the door, and stood over him, staring down at his face. He must have felt it, because his eyes fluttered open. The moment he saw me standing there, fear flashed across his face, and he tried to get up. I didn't give him the chance. I pressed one hand on his chest, pushed his chin up with the other, and bit down on his throat as hard as I could. He screamed. He clawed at my head trying to pull me off, but I wouldn't let go. The other inmates woke up and came at me, punching and kicking, but my teeth stayed locked on his neck. Blood was flowing down onto the bedboard. They all realized I was crazy. They started screaming for the guards. The guards rushed in and tried to pull us apart, but nothing worked. Finally, one of them hit me across the back with a rubber baton until I couldn't hold on anymore. My eyes rolled back and everything went dark. I woke up the next day in a hospital bed at Jingzhou City People's Hospital. White walls, white ceiling, not the cell. The damage was bad. On top of everything from before, I had another broken rib and a split above my eyebrow that took 6 or 7 stitches. A guard named Xiao Huang was watching over me. He told me Zhang Jian almost had his throat torn open. When I asked if he was dead, my disappointment must have shown, because the guard swallowed hard and changed the subject. He asked how old I was. I told him I didn't know. He thought I was lying, but I wasn't. The truth is, I've never known my age. As far back as I can remember, I lived on the streets with some man. I don't know if he was my father. He never called me his son. Every few days he'd give me leftover food he'd scavenged, but mostly I fed myself. By 6 or 7, I was digging through garbage piles. Then the man died. By the time I found him, his body had already started to rot. After that I was on my own. Rotten vegetable leaves from the trash. Fighting stray dogs for scraps. That was my life. Then not long ago, I got into a fight with another homeless man over half a steamed bun and broke his arm. Someone called the police. They took me in, but they couldn't find any record of me. No ID, no file, nothing. When they asked my name, I remembered those 2 words the man used to mutter sometimes. Yu Fei. So that became my name, and they sent me straight to Jingzhou City First Prison. Later that day, the prison warden came to see me, a man named Liang Dong. He said he'd looked into my background and felt sorry for me. But then his tone shifted. He said this prison was his territory and I'd caused him a lot of trouble. He leaned in close, pointed at my chest, and told me this was my first and last warning. If I caused problems again, he'd show me what real despair felt like. After Liangdong left, Xiao Huang let out a long breath and told me to behave when I got back. I nodded but didn't say anything. 5 days later, I could walk again, so they sent me back to the prison. But they didn't put me in the old cell. They moved me to a different block, Block 2. The guard Xiao Huang brought me in and spoke to a middle-aged inmate they called Fifth Master. He was in his 40s or 50s, bald, a little chubby, ordinary-looking. Xiao Huang told him I was the kid from Block 3 who came in with injuries and asked him to look after me. Fifth Master recognized who I was right away. He asked Xiao Huang if he wasn't worried about a guy named Wang the Cripple causing trouble for me. Wang the Cripple, real name Wang Xinliang, had his right foot tendon cut at some point, so he walked with a limp. He was close with Zhang Jian, and everyone knew he'd come after me to get revenge. Xiao Huang shrugged and said it was Warden Liangdong's orders. He'd learned about my past and felt bad for me, so he'd asked Fifth Master to keep an eye on me as a personal favor. Fifth Master found it interesting that the warden would send me right into Wang the Cripple's block on purpose. He told me to go lie down. I didn't argue. The bumpy ride back from the hospital had my broken rib aching again. At noon the work crews came back. A big, mean-looking guy named Yuan Gang, everyone called him Gang Z, asked Fifth Master who I was. Fifth Master told him I was the one who nearly killed Zhang Jian in Block 3. That story had spread through the whole prison by then. Zhang Jian wasn't some nobody, he ran Block 3. The fact that a newcomer almost took him out was big news. Yuan Gang dropped the attitude after hearing that. When I sat up, Yuan Gang got annoyed that I only nodded at Fifth Master instead of speaking properly. He was about to come at me, and I jumped off the bed barefoot, ready to fight. But Fifth Master stopped him. He scolded Yuan Gang, told him to use his brain instead of his fists for once. Turns out Yuan Gang wasn't just some prison friend. He'd followed Fifth Master from the outside. Fifth Master had come in voluntarily, doing time as a favor to some important person. Yuan Gang had gotten himself locked up right after just to stay close and take care of him. Fifth Master told the whole cell who I was and said nobody was to mess with me unless they had a real reason. Everyone nodded. He was the boss of Block 2 and a big name in the south side of Jingzhou City. Nobody was going to argue. Then came lunch. The usual for everyone: 2 corn buns, pickled radish, and boiled turnip in salt water. But for Fifth Master, someone brought a special tray: a bowl of rice, stir-fried vegetables, braised pork, and a piece of stewed fish. Yuan Gang took the tray and set it in front of him. I glanced at the pork and the rich smell hit me. I swallowed without meaning to. Fifth Master noticed. He slid the bowl of braised pork over to me and told me to eat it, said I was still injured and couldn't heal on just buns and turnips. Yuan Gang got jealous and complained, asking why I got the pork. Fifth Master glared at him and told him turnips were perfect for him, good for cooling down his temper. I looked at the pork, then at Fifth Master. For the first time in a long while, I opened my mouth and said thank you. Something shifted inside me. Nobody had ever done anything like that for me before. After lunch, Yuan Gang came over and whispered to me, asking if I was Fifth Master's secret son. I didn't know what that meant, so I asked out loud. Fifth Master heard and got furious. He grabbed a corn bun from the guy next to him and threw it right at Yuan Gang's forehead. Those prison buns are rock hard. It left a big bump. Then I finally tasted the braised pork. I froze. In the hospital, I thought I'd already eaten the best food in the world, but this was something else entirely. Yuan Gang noticed me staring and joked that if I didn't want it, he'd take some. I actually pushed the bowl toward him. It wasn't that I didn't want it, I wanted it badly. But Fifth Master had given it to me, and Yuan Gang was Fifth Master's man, so I felt like I should share. Fifth Master saw right through me and sighed. He told Yuan Gang to shut up or lose his own meal. Yuan Gang quickly backed off and told me to keep eating. After the meal, the guards came to take everyone out for labor. Fifth Master assumed I'd stay behind since I was injured, but the guard specifically came for me, said it was Warden Liangdong's orders. Fifth Master frowned but didn't push it. He couldn't afford to make an enemy of the warden over me, but he told Yuan Gang to keep an eye on me. Out on the yard, I noticed something strange. Block 3 inmates had been brought out too, even though Block 2 had enough people to clear the weeds. Yuan Gang tensed up beside me. The setup was obvious. Someone had arranged this on purpose. The guards gave their instructions and walked off together. Xiao Huang was among them. He glanced back at me, but said nothing. Then a man with a limp came up to me, trailed by over 30 inmates from both blocks. This was Wang the Cripple, Wang Xinliang, Zhang Jian's close friend. He asked if I was the one who nearly bit through his brother's throat. I didn't answer, but my eyes went sharp. I watched every one of them. Yuan Gang stepped closer to me and asked Wang the Cripple if Zhang Jian had sent word. Wang the Cripple asked if Fifth Master was protecting me. Yuan Gang didn't say it directly, but made it clear Fifth Master had taken an interest in me. Wang the Cripple's face darkened. He said Zhang Jian was still lying in a hospital bed with his throat nearly torn open. He said they'd spent a lot, bribing Warden Liang Dong to set up this chance to get at me. He wasn't about to walk away empty-handed just because of one casual remark from Yuan Gang. Yuan Gang's eyes narrowed. He asked if Wang the Cripple was really going to disrespect Fifth Master's wishes. Wang the Cripple's expression shifted back and forth. Finally, he backed down, not out of kindness, but because he knew he was nowhere near Fifth Master's level. Still, he said his brother's situation needed some kind of answer. Yuan Gang and Wang the Cripple agreed on a deal, a one-on-one fight between me and Wang the Cripple. If he couldn't finish me, then he and Zhang Jian would leave me alone for good. Fifth Master's word behind it. Yuan Gang slapped my shoulder and told me not to embarrass his boss. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but I nodded. Wang the Cripple didn't wait. He launched at me before I even turned around. His fist smashed into my face and I stumbled. Before I could recover, he came with a knee to my gut. I managed to block it, but took another punch to the face. He was fast, way faster than you'd expect from a man with a bad leg. Yuan Gang was slapping his own thigh watching me get hit. I finally snapped into focus. Something shifted behind my eyes. We traded punches and both winced from the pain. He kicked at me and I twisted to dodge, but it pulled at my broken rib and I groaned. He used that moment to tackle me to the ground, sat on top of me, and started hammering my head left and right. My stitches ripped open. Blood ran down my face. Yuan Gang screamed at me to get up. His voice cut through the fog in my head. When Wang the Cripple threw another punch down, I grabbed his arm and yanked him forward. He almost fell off me. And while he was trying to straighten up, I wrapped my arms around him, turned my head, and bit down on his ear. He screamed. Then he threw himself backward to break free and crashed to the ground, rolling around with both hands over the side of his head. Blood was pouring through his fingers. I got up slowly, holding my ribs. I opened my mouth and spit something out. It was his ear. Everyone around us just stared. Yuan Gang froze too. He was probably thinking I must be part dog. First I nearly bit through Zhang Jian's throat, and now I'd bitten off Wang the Cripple's ear. Those two brothers really had the worst luck. But I wasn't done. I threw myself on top of Wang the Cripple and started biting his face, tearing at it, one bite after another. Then I went for his neck again, right at the artery. Yuan Gang panicked. He rushed in yelling for people to pull me off. He didn't want me to kill the guy. If I did, I'd never get out of prison, and Fifth Master would have no use for me. The others grabbed me. I had no strength left anyway. My body was already running on nothing. They pulled me away easily. Yuan Gang checked Wang the Cripple's neck. Just teeth marks. The skin wasn't even broken. He turned around and smacked me on the head, calling me a rabid dog. That one slap was all it took. My eyes rolled back and I passed out. Yuan Gang couldn't believe it. I'd taken dozens of hits from Wang the Cripple and stayed conscious, but one slap from him and I dropped. They sent both of us to the hospital. Wang the Cripple's face was so torn up the doctors didn't know where to start stitching. As for me, they needed to check whether my broken rib had gotten worse. At Jingzhou City People's Hospital, the same doctor from last time was on duty. When he saw me again, his face went strange. He told the guard they needed to stop doing this to me. The guard said it was inmates fighting each other. The doctor nodded like he'd heard that one before. Then they brought in Wang the Cripple. The doctor looked down at his chewed-up face and went pale. "Now you've gone too far," he said. "You're actually using dogs to bite people?" I woke up a few hours later. They'd re-stitched my eyebrow. The rib was fine, just needed a few more days in bed. Same white walls, different room. And the same guard, Xiao Huang, sitting by the door. For a second I thought I was dreaming. When I asked if Wang the Cripple was dead, Xiao Huang froze. He'd heard that question from me before. He He said the guy wasn't dead, but probably wished he was. His face looked like it had been chewed by a dog. Then Xiao Huang paused, looked at me, and corrected himself. It really had been chewed by a dog. A mad dog. That was my new nickname in the prison now, Mad Dog. Everyone knew who I was. A few days later, I went back to the cell in Block 2, Fifth Master's cell. When I walked in, everyone stared. Yuan Gang almost choked on his corn bun. He started to say, mad, then caught himself and just said my name instead, commenting that I healed fast. Fifth Master pushed his whole meal tray over to me. Yuan Gang grumbled that Fifth Master had just been eating his rice pretty happily a minute ago, so his no appetite excuse was nonsense. I hesitated, but Fifth Master smiled, so I sat down and ate. Yuan Gang told me Fifth Master had spent a lot of money because of me. Apparently, after Yuan Gang stood up for me on the yard, the whole prison knew I was Fifth Master's man. Warden Liang Dong used the trouble I'd caused as leverage to squeeze money out of Fifth Master. Fifth Master didn't really care about Liang Dong, but people like him always need to keep good relations with prisons and police stations, if not for himself, then for the people who work for him. After that, nobody bothered me anymore. Fifth Master and Yuan Gang learned about my past, the streets, the garbage, the stray dogs. They felt sorry for me, though they didn't make a big deal of it. Over the next month, Fifth Master taught me a lot. Everyday things I'd never learned. How the world works, how people operate. Yuan Gang joked several times that Fifth Master should just adopt me, but Fifth Master always refused. Yuan Gang became my teacher too. He taught me how to fight properly, when to go all out, and when to hold back. The more time I spent with him, the more I changed. I started talking more, even cracking jokes sometimes. Then the day came for Fifth Master to leave. He called me and Yuan Gang over. He told us Wang the cripple was back and Zhang Jian was almost healed. He ordered Yuan Gang to look after me and not let anyone set me up. Yuan Gang thumped his chest and said not to worry. Fifth Master glared at him and told him to use his brain for once. I smiled and said Yuan Gang was actually pretty smart. Yuan Gang pointed at me proudly and told Fifth Master to listen. Fifth Master rolled his eyes and reminded us what a pair we made, one idiot and one mad dog. He told us if anything came up we couldn't handle, to find a man named Li Xiang, the head of Block 2. Li Xiang could contact Fifth Master on the outside. The guard came to collect him, and just like that, Fifth Master was gone. Yuan Gang got sentimental. He looked at me and said it was just the two of us now, then jokingly suggested we share a blanket to bond. I felt a chill run through me. I grinned and asked him if he wasn't afraid I'd bite. His eyes went wide, and he immediately surrendered, said being brothers was good enough. The next day, Yuan Gang and I were out in the yard when a prisoner came walking toward us fast, head down. The day after Fifth Master left, Yuan Gang and I were out in the yard when a prisoner came rushing at me with his head down. Yuan Gang spotted the danger instantly and yanked me aside. The guy pulled a screwdriver with a wooden handle from his waistband and stabbed at me, but he missed. Yuan Gang's pull and my own instincts saved me. Yuan Gang grabbed the man by the hair, locked his screwdriver hand, and drove a knee into his forehead. The guy collapsed unconscious. Then Yuan Gang spun around and screamed at Wang the cripple, who was standing nearby. Wang the cripple played innocent, but Yuan Gang wasn't fooled. Nobody else in Block 3 had a grudge against me. Wang the cripple tried to deflect blame onto Zhang Jian, but Yuan Gang saw right through it and kicked him to the ground. Before things could go further, the big iron gate opened and guards brought out Block 3 inmates. Yuan Gang cursed under his breath. Warden Liang Dong had taken bribes from both sides again. Then I heard a voice I knew well. The Block 3 inmates parted and Zhang Jian walked out, smiling with that vicious grin. His neck still showed the scar from where I'd bitten him. Wang the cripple's face was a mess of bite marks. They wanted revenge badly enough to throw away their futures for it. Zhang Jian tried to talk Yuan Gang into stepping aside. He pointed to his throat, pointed to Wang the cripple's ruined face and missing ear. Yuan Gang refused. I was Fifth Master's man, and everyone knew it. Zhang Jian shrugged and said fine. He'd rot in prison for life if that's what it took, as long as he killed this mad dog. Zhang Jian gave the order, and his men charged. Wang the cripple's crew followed. Yuan Gang roared and sent our side in. The whole yard turned into a battlefield, Block 2 against Block 3. Yuan Gang was a monster in that fight, plowing through bodies. but most of the other side was coming straight for me. Zhang Jian and Wang the cripple were determined to finish me. I fought back at first, but the numbers swallowed me. Then I felt a sharp pain in my left arm. Zhang Jian had pulled a metal file from behind his back and aimed for my chest. I twisted just in time. It missed my heart, but went clean through my arm, in one side and out the other. Something inside me snapped. My eyes went red. I screamed and pushed myself off the ground. Zhang Jian couldn't pull the file out fast enough and left it stuck in my arm. Yuan Gang reached me at that moment and saw the file sticking through. I pulled it out with my right hand, slow and steady, staring straight at Zhang Jian. I was ready to go for him. Yuan Gang grabbed me and took the file from my hand. He turned to face all the Block 3 inmates and spoke in a voice so calm it was terrifying. He asked them if they really wanted to throw their lives away for Zhang Jian and Wang the cripple. He told them that when they got out of prison, their next stop would be the crematorium in the south side of the city. Every prisoner who met his eyes looked away. Nobody wanted to die for those two. Yuan Gang walked toward Zhang Jian and Wang the cripple step by step, file in hand. They panicked. He stopped in front of them, smiled coldly, and said they weren't big enough to touch his brother. He raised the file to strike. Then someone shouted, "Stop!" The iron gate opened and Warden Liang Dong walked out with a group of guards, his face dark. His arrival saved Zhang Jian and Wang the cripple from Yuan Gang's file. Liang Dong asked if we were trying to start a riot. Yuan Gang didn't back down at all. He mocked the warden to his face, asking if he'd been eating too well lately, meaning he'd been taking bribes from both sides. Liang Dong's face went black. He couldn't believe Yuan Gang would disrespect him like that. Then Yuan Gang dropped a bomb. He told Liang Dong that Fifth Master, whose real name was Qin Kuan, wasn't someone to mess with. He asked if the warden thought he was more important than Liu Songlin. That name changed everything. Liu Songlin was the former chief judge of Jingzhou City's intermediate court, a high-ranking official who'd been taken down. The rumor was that Fifth Master's network had done it. Compared to that, Liang Dong was just a mid-level prison warden. His face went pale. Still, Liang Dong didn't want to lose face in front of the inmates. He couldn't touch Yuan Gang. That would mean going against Fifth Master directly. So he turned on me instead. He ordered Xiao Huang to throw me in the dog cage, solitary confinement. Xiao Huang hesitated. Li Xiang, the Block 2 chief, stepped in and mentioned I was still wounded. Liang Dong exploded at him for talking back. Then Yuan Gang stopped them. He stepped in front of me and told Liang Dong I was Fifth Master's adopted son. He asked if the warden really wanted to put Fifth Master's son in a dog cage. Liang Dong froze. He wasn't sure if it was true, but the risk was too big. Fifth Master had no children of his own. If I really was his adopted son, that could mean I was being groomed as his successor. Liang Dong thought about it and figured Yuan Gang wouldn't fight this hard for me over a one-month friendship. The adopted son story made sense. So Liang Dong just snorted and walked away, leaving the mess for Li Xiang to clean up. After he left, Li Xiang asked Yuan Gang if I was really Fifth Master's adopted son. Yuan Gang spat on the ground and said no. He'd made it up on the spot. Since Liang Dong had backed off and given Fifth Master face, Yuan Gang couldn't go after Zhang Jian and Wang the cripple anymore either. That was the unspoken deal. Li Xiang told Xiao Huang to take me to the infirmary. Blood was still running through my fingers from the hole in my arm. Li Xiang asked Yuan Gang if they should tell Fifth Master about all this. Yuan Gang refused. He said Zhang Jian and Wang the cripple weren't worth bothering his boss over. If Liang Dong hadn't stepped in, he would have buried them both. After they stitched up my arm, Xiao Huang brought me back to the cell. Yuan Gang sat me down on a little stool and started lecturing me. He asked me what I'd been thinking. He said if he hadn't grabbed the file away from me, I would have killed those two and spent the rest of my life in prison. He smacked me on the head and asked if I ever wanted to get out. He said I hadn't even held a girl's hand yet. Was I really okay rotting in here forever? That last slap actually made me angry, but he had a point. I talked back at Yuan Gang. I told him he was no different. If the warden hadn't yelled stop, he would have killed those two as well. Yuan Gang shook his head and smiled. He said it wasn't the same. He was older, he'd lived his life, enjoyed everything there was to enjoy. But I was still young. I hadn't seen the world yet. I needed to learn to leave myself a way out. I didn't know what to say. Then he smacked me on the head again and told me to stop calling him gang brother. He said I wasn't his underling. I was his brother. He told me to just call him Brother. My eyes stung a little. I called him brother. He laughed, called me his smelly little brother, and threw his arm around my shoulder. After the yard fight, the warden transferred Wang the cripple to Block 3. From then on, neither he nor Zhang Jian ever came after me again. 3 months passed. Fifth Master pulled some strings from outside and got both Yuan Gang and me released. It was a scorching July day when the prison gates opened and we walked out side by side. Yuan Gang was wearing a black trench coat with sunglasses and a cigarette, trying to look cool. I was still wearing my prison uniform. The guards had thrown away the rags I came in with, so I had nothing else. I asked him if he wasn't hot. He told me I was just a kid who didn't understand style. I pointed at his forehead, which was dripping with sweat. He was about to yell at me when 2 cars screeched to a stop in front of us, an Audi 100 and a Santana. Yuan Gang let out a strange yelp and lunged at the Santana like he was reuniting with a lover. I stepped up behind him, looking at the car curiously. Then I heard a familiar voice. Fifth Master stepped out of the back of the Audi. I called out to him, genuinely happy. Yuan Gang rushed over to explain why I was still in prison clothes. The driver of the Santana got out too, a clean-faced middle-aged man named Lin Sudong. He asked Yuan Gang if he was hot in that coat, the same question I'd asked. Yuan Gang nearly exploded and rolled up his sleeves to fight him. Fifth Master told them both to knock it off and get in the cars. Yuan Gang told me to sit in the passenger seat and said he'd take me for a ride. I stood at the car door and just stared at it. I didn't know how to open it. Sweat was forming on my forehead from embarrassment. Yuan Gang realized I'd never been in a car before and opened it from inside. Lin Sudong laughed and said I was interesting. Yuan Gang glared at him and said I was his brother, and he meant it. He told Lin Sudong not to mess with me. Lin Sudong looked back and forth between us, trying to figure out how we could be related since we looked nothing alike. Yuan Gang introduced us. He told me to call Lin Sudong East brother. I turned around and said it. Lin Sudong smiled back, but I could tell he was curious about who I was. Lin Sudong was Fifth Master's other right-hand man. Yuan Gang handled the muscle, Lin Sudong handled the brains. Together they'd helped Fifth Master, real name Qin Kuan, rise from nothing to become the top boss of Jingzhou's south side. We drove for half an hour from the north side of the city down to Fifth Master's territory in the south. The car stopped in front of a place called Chongqing Shopping Center, the only indoor market in the South District. Fifth Master leaned out of his Audi and told Yuan Gang to take me to buy some clothes and to get himself a change too. Yuan Gang turned to Lin Sudong and just held out his hands. Lin Sudong lost it. He couldn't believe Yuan Gang wanted him to pay for our clothes. But that was just how those two were with each other. Yuan Gang told Lin Sudong he'd just gotten out of prison and had no money, so buying us clothes should count as a welcome gift. Lin Sudong gave in and pulled out his wallet, but before he could take out any cash, Yuan Gang snatched the whole thing and ran off with me into the shopping center. We came back in new clothes with shopping bags. Lin Sudong demanded his wallet back. Yuan Gang tossed it to him like it was nothing. Lin Sudong opened it and found it empty, just cards, no cash. Yuan Gang coughed awkwardly and said his neck had been feeling light, so he'd bought himself a gold chain. He pulled a shiny thick chain out from under his shirt. Lin Sudong glared. That chain was maybe 3,000 or 5,000 at most, but there had been 10,000 in the wallet. I smiled shyly and said I had one too. I pulled out a matching gold chain from under my collar. Lin Sudong looked like he was about to explode. He said his chest felt tight and he needed to go take medicine. Yuan Gang and I looked at each other and grinned. A few minutes later we pulled up to a grand hotel, the Marriott Holiday Hotel. It was Fifth Master's property. We followed him inside. The building had 5 floors, lobby and entertainment on the first, guest rooms on 2 and 3, restaurant and banquet hall on 4, and Fifth Master's office took up the entire 5th floor. We rode the elevator up. I stared at everything like I'd landed on another planet. When we walked into the office, the layout and the view through the floor-to-ceiling windows left me speechless. Fifth Master sat down, lit a cigar, and started talking business. He asked Lin Sudong about a club he ran called the Marriott Royal Club, his main moneymaker. Lin Sudong said business was bad because some new police chief named Ma kept sending inspections, scaring away customers. Fifth Master wasn't happy about that. Then Fifth Master told Yuan Gang to show me around for a few days, and after that we'd both go to the Marriott nightclub. Yuan Gang had been running the nightclub before prison. It was where Fifth Master's fighters were kept. I'd go along to help him. I nodded and called him Fifth Master. Yuan Gang smacked me on the head and told me to say, Big Brother, instead. Since Yuan Gang had made me his brother, I was part of the family now. Calling him Fifth Master was too distant. I rubbed my head and called Yuan Gang, brother. Fifth Master heard that and raised an eyebrow. Yuan Gang grinned and told him he'd taken me as his little brother. Fifth Master smiled and said that was good news. Tonight's dinner was a welcome home party, and now there was something extra to celebrate. Lin Sudong muttered under his breath that this celebration had cost him 10,000. Luckily, Yuan Gang didn't hear him. Fifth Master had 3 properties total. The hotel where we stood was his headquarters. The Royal Club, run by Lin Sudong, was his money machine. It housed the biggest gambling operation in all of Jingzhou City. And the nightclub, run by Yuan Gang, was where he kept his muscle. That evening we went down to the 4th floor banquet hall for the welcome dinner. It wasn't just us. Some of Fifth Master's lower-ranking guys were coming too. We were sitting and talking when someone burst through the entrance, shouting that he'd missed Yuan Gang, and came rushing straight at him. The first person to arrive at the dinner was a guy called Little Dragon, real name Jiang Zilong. He had a big build, almost as large as Yuan Gang, but with a strangely delicate face that didn't match his body. He'd been temporarily running the nightclub while Yuan Gang was locked up. Yuan Gang and Little Dragon joked around for a bit. Then Yuan Gang pulled me forward and introduced me as his brother. Little Dragon looked surprised, but didn't argue. He knew better than to question Yuan Gang. I smiled and greeted him. I wasn't that quiet, awkward kid anymore. 2 more people showed up after that. One was Lu Jin, short, with a rat-like face. The other was Li Wenqi, tall, handsome, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. Both of them worked under Lin Sudong at the club. Fifth Master told everyone to sit. He raised his glass and explained that tonight was a welcome dinner for Yuan Gang and me. He introduced me to the group. Li Wenqi suggested I should come work at the club with him instead of the nightclub. Little Dragon jumped in immediately, saying I belonged with Yuan Gang at the nightclub. The 2 of them started arguing over me. Fifth Master just sat there smoking his cigar, enjoying the show. Yuan Gang and Lin Sudong watched too. They could see right through what both guys were after. Li Wenqi said I was too scrawny to be a fighter. Little Dragon fired back that I was small but mighty. The whole table burst out laughing. My face went red. Fifth Master ended the debate. I'd go to the nightclub with Yuan Gang. Then Yuan Gang told everyone what I'd done in prison. How on my very first day, I'd nearly killed a block boss, and then with a broken rib took on his partner and nearly killed him too. Lin Sudong's eyes lit up. He finally understood why Fifth Master had taken me in. Li Wenqi held up his hands and admitted he'd misjudged me. Little Dragon slapped my shoulder excitedly. Right in the middle of all this, the front desk girl burst in and said a man named Lu Baoshan had arrived. The mood changed instantly. Yuan Gang slammed the table and cursed. Little Dragon grabbed a dinner knife and was about to go downstairs. Fifth Master tapped the table with his knuckle and everyone froze. He told them to calm down. He said guests were guests and told the girl to bring the man up. Lu Baoshan was the boss of Jingzhou's west side. He and Fifth Master had an uneasy relationship, not enemies, not friends. But while Fifth Master was in prison, Lu Baoshan's men had started causing trouble. Yuan Gang had gotten locked up because of a fight with Lu Baoshan's people. That's why everyone at the table was furious. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Then Lu Baoshan walked in, a heavy-set man with a rough, meaty face. From across the room, he called out cheerfully to Fifth Master, saying he wished he'd known Yuan Gang was getting out so he could have come to apologize sooner. I looked over at the man who just walked in. Lu Baoshan was short and fat. From a distance, he looked like a ball. An ugly knife scar ran across his entire face. Behind him were 3 people. 2 plain-looking middle-aged men and a younger guy around 27 or 28 with dyed yellow hair who couldn't stop fidgeting. Fifth Master played dumb. He puffed his cigar and asked what apology Lu Baoshan was talking about, as if he had no idea what happened to Yuan Gang. Lu Baoshan played along, explaining that his man Hao Chong had a misunderstanding with Yuan Gang that put him in prison. Fifth Master pretended to be shocked and said Yuan Gang had told him he went in for beating up a beggar. They went back and forth like this, both smiling, both knowing the truth, neither saying it straight. Fifth Master kept slipping in little jabs, calling the whole thing kids roughhousing, implying Liu Baoshan's side were the juniors. That made Liu Baoshan's men furious, but Liu Baoshan waved them down. Then Liu Baoshan got to the point. He said he knew about the new police chief, Chief Ma, who'd been causing problems at the Royal Club. He offered to make the problem go away. Fifth Master pretended to be grateful and raised his glass, but Liu Baoshan stopped him and said a toast wasn't enough payment. He wanted in on the gambling operation at the club. The room went cold. Fifth Master dropped his smile. Yuan Gang jumped to his feet and cursed Liu Baoshan out. Liu Baoshan's 3 guys fired back. Little Dragon and the others stood up too. I didn't join the shouting, but I moved next to Yuan Gang, ready if things turned physical. Fifth Master slammed the table and told everyone to sit. Then he told Liu Baoshan no. The gambling ring was his life's work. Nobody was getting a piece of it. Liu Baoshan pushed harder. He said he knew Fifth Master had powerful people behind him, but this new chief Ma wasn't easy to deal with either. He hinted that he had connections who could handle Ma and suggested they make money together. Fifth Master thought it over, but shook his head again. He said if he let Liu Baoshan in because of one police chief, then the next chief would bring another partner and another after that. Once the wall cracked, it would never hold. Liu Baoshan gave a stiff smile, wished Fifth Master good fortune, and left with his men. After they were gone, Lin Sudong started to say something, but Fifth Master cut him off, just said, "Eat." He didn't want to discuss it at the table. After dinner, Fifth Master sent Yuan Gang and me out to have some fun. Little Dragon went back to the nightclub. Lin Sudong and the others returned to the club. Later that night, up in his 5th-floor office, Fifth Master sat alone smoking his cigar. After thinking for a while, he picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Secretary Lin," he said respectfully when the call connected. After dinner, Yuan Gang and I drove the Santana to a place called Red Light Street in the south side. I was drunk and could barely keep my eyes open. I asked where we were going. He laughed and said he was taking me to have my first time. I didn't understand what he meant. By the time we got there, I'd fallen asleep. Yuan Gang opened my door, threw me over his shoulder, and carried me into a building with red lights over the entrance. A woman named Xiao Yu greeted him. She knew Yuan Gang well. He told her I was his brother and needed a young girl for my first time. Xiao Yu's eyes lit up when she saw me, but Yuan Gang told her to focus and find someone else. She came back with a pretty young woman in a tank top and black shorts. Yuan Gang approved, carried me to a bed in the nearest room, and told the girl to do the work since I was too drunk to move. Then he grabbed Xiao Yu and disappeared into another room. I was half asleep when I felt someone taking off my clothes. I tried to open my eyes but couldn't. Then something cold pressed against my skin and I jolted awake. The girl was lying next to me, smiling. We were both completely naked. My face turned bright red. I'd never been in a situation like this before. She started to tease me, but then we both heard noises outside. I signaled her to be quiet and listened. Voices were whispering. They said Yuan Gang Santana was parked nearby, so this had to be the place. They told each other to keep quiet and kill him the moment they got inside. My face changed instantly. I grabbed the first pair of pants I could find and pulled them on. They turned out to be hers, but I didn't care. I looked around, picked up the wooden nightstand beside the bed, kicked open the door, and screamed for Yuan Gang. The men outside cursed. They hadn't known I was there. They rushed at me. I smashed the nightstand into them and grabbed a fruit knife from a nearby table. Yuan Gang came out of the back room in nothing but his underwear, confused. Then he saw who was standing across from us, a man named Hao Chong. This was Liu Baoshan's guy, the same one who'd gotten Yuan Gang sent to prison. Hao Chong had his neck wrapped in a scarf and one arm in a sling. He pulled the scarf aside and showed a centipede-like scar running across his throat, Yuan Gang's work from their last fight. He said the scar and the broken arm were reason enough for what was about to happen. He gave the order. 7 or 8 men with cleavers charged at us. Yuan Gang yelled at me to fight like our lives depended on it. He grabbed an iron clothing rod and swung into the crowd. I dodged a cleaver aimed at my head, stepped in close, and drove the fruit knife into the man's side. I didn't hold back. The fruit knife was only about 6 centimeters long, but I buried the whole blade into the guy's side, right to the handle. He went down clutching his stomach, blood pouring through his fingers. Then a cleaver caught me across the shoulder, and I hit the ground too. Yuan Gang saw me go down and went berserk. I screamed, got back up, and threw myself at the one who'd cut me. I stopped caring about the blades hitting my body. I just charged into the group and started stabbing wildly. Hao Chang panicked. He was tough, but he'd never seen someone like me. Someone who didn't care if he lived or died. I dropped 2 more of his guys in seconds. The rest started backing away. With Yuan Gang swinging that iron rod beside me, they didn't stand a chance. Hao Chang yelled for his men to run and bolted out the door. The others followed. I chased after them with the fruit knife. Yuan Gang shouted for me to stop, but I couldn't hear him, or didn't want to. But I'd been drinking all night, and I was bleeding from too many cuts. My legs got heavier and heavier. My vision went black, and I collapsed face first onto the street. Yuan Gang caught up and lifted me. I couldn't respond. Everything was dark. Back at the hotel, Fifth Master had just finished a phone call when his phone buzzed again. It was Yuan Gang, crying, begging him to come save me. Fifth Master asked where we were. Yuan Gang managed to say Red Light Street, Xiaoyu's place. Fifth Master called Lin Sudong and told him to get people there fast. He called Little Dragon too. Within the hour, 200 or 300 men poured into Red Light Street from every direction. Lin Sudong got there first. He found Yuan Gang sitting on the ground holding me, sobbing, covered in blood and snot. Yuan Gang begged him to save his little brother. Lin Sudong told his guys to get me in a car immediately. They couldn't take me to a real hospital. If someone called the police, there'd be trouble. Instead, they sent me to a man named Old Huang who ran a small clinic and handled injuries for people like us. Lin Sudong tried to stop Yuan Gang from going, wanting to know what happened. Yuan Gang told him it was Hao Chang, Liu Baoshan's man, who'd ambushed us. He swore he'd kill him. Lin Sudong asked if there were loose ends. Yuan Gang pointed inside the building and said I'd put 3 of them on the floor. He didn't know if they were dead or alive. Then he got in the car and left with me. Little Dragon arrived shortly after with his crew. Lin Sudong told him I was hurt badly and Yuan Gang was banged up. Little Dragon seemed relieved Yuan Gang was okay. He barely knew me, so I wasn't his priority. Lin Sudong told him to go deal with the bodies inside. Little Dragon found 3 men on the floor. The one I'd stabbed in the side was barely breathing. The other 2 were in better shape. He had them loaded into a car and dumped at a hospital entrance. Then Lu Jin ran up with bad news. The police were coming. The new chief Ma was leading them personally. Lin Sudong narrowed his eyes. For the chief to show up himself meant this was more than a random incident. Lin Sudong went to meet them. At the entrance to Red Light Street, a dozen police officers were facing off against over 100 of Fifth Master's men blocking the road. Chief Ma had his hand on his holstered gun, ordering them to move. One of the guys smirked and asked if standing on a public road chatting was illegal now. Ma ordered him arrested on the spot. I don't remember much after I hit the ground. Everything went black. What I learned later is that Yuan Gang called Fifth Master, crying, begging him to save me. Fifth Master called Lin Sudong and Little Dragon, and within the hour 200 or 300 men flooded into Red Light Street. Lin Sudong got there first. He had me loaded into a car and sent to a small clinic nearby, run by a man named Old Huang, a doctor who treated people like us, no questions asked. A real hospital would have meant police reports. Meanwhile, Lin Sudong went to deal with Chief Ma, who'd shown up at Red Light Street with a dozen officers. Ma was aggressive, insulting everyone, calling them trash, threatening arrests. Lin Sudong kept his cool and stalled him long enough for Little Dragon to clean up the scene inside. Then Lin Sudong made an excuse about soup on the stove and walked away. The crowd parted for the police, but by the time Ma got inside, there was nothing left to find. At the clinic, Yuan Gang sat beside my bed watching me. I was wrapped head to toe in bandages, only my face showing. Old Huang said I'd lost too much blood and sent someone to get blood plasma. Fifth Master arrived and sat down. Yuan Gang told him how Chang had to die. Fifth Master said now wasn't the time. Yuan Gang didn't understand. Fifth Master explained that Chief Ma had shown up at the scene right after the attack, which meant this wasn't just Hao Chang acting alone. Yuan Gang asked if that person, meaning Fifth Master's connection, could deal with Ma. Fifth Master shook his head. He told Yuan Gang what he'd learned earlier that night. Before any of this happened, Fifth Master had called his biggest backer, Lin Xiangnan, the party secretary of Jingzhou City. He'd asked about Chief Ma's background. Secretary Lin had gone quiet, then told Fifth Master to endure it. Ma Rongxiang wasn't someone they could touch. The day Ma arrived in Jingzhou, The provincial discipline inspection secretary had personally called Lin Xiangnan to warn him. Ma's roots went all the way up to the province level. Even Secretary Lin was afraid of him. Hearing all this, Yuan Gang slapped himself across the face. I was lying unconscious because of him, and he couldn't even get revenge. Fifth Master grabbed his hand and stopped him from hitting himself again. He told Yuan Gang that nobody stays on top forever. This debt would be repaid eventually. Yuan Gang's eyes were red. He pointed at me on the bed and said, "This is my brother." Fifth Master looked at him and said, "You're my brother too." Then the clinic door opened and Lin Sudong walked in with Little Dragon and Lu Jing. Yuan Gang turned away so they wouldn't see his eyes and told them all to get out. His brother was sleeping. I was out for almost 10 hours. When I opened my eyes, I was in a small clinic. Yuan Gang was sitting right beside me. He hadn't slept all night. "Brother," I said weakly. His eyes went red the moment he heard it. He told me not to talk and ran off yelling for Old Huang, the doctor. Old Huang was an older man with gray hair. Yuan Gang dragged him out by the arm. The doctor grumbled that he was too old to be yanked around like that. He glanced at me and said I was fine. If I'd woken up, the worst was over. Just rest for a few days. Yuan Gang wasn't satisfied and demanded a proper examination. Old Huang sighed, pulled off my blanket, and then froze. He grinned and said my taste in clothing was interesting. Yuan Gang looked down and went still too. I was wearing a pair of women's black hot pants. Last night, when everything happened, I'd grabbed the first pants I could find in the dark. They'd turned out to be the girls'. Nobody had noticed at the clinic because they'd been too focused on my wounds. Yuan Gang scratched his head, staring at the shorts. He said they looked familiar. Then it hit him. They were the ones the young woman at Xiao Yu's place had been wearing. Old Huang asked what girl they were talking about. I didn't answer. The moment Yuan Gang mentioned her, the memory came flooding back. Waking up naked next to a stranger, both of us with nothing on. My whole face turned burning red. While I'd been unconscious, a lot had happened that I only learned about later. Fifth Master and Lin Sudong had stood outside the clinic piecing things together. They realized Lu Baoshan and Chief Ma were working as a team. Tonight's negotiation at dinner had been a setup. Lu Baoshan came to distract Fifth Master while Hao Chong ambushed us. Looking back further, they figured Ma's hand was behind everything. When Fifth Master went to prison months ago, Hao Chong had immediately gone after Yuan Gang and gotten him locked up too. They'd probably tried to get Lin Sudong as well, but couldn't find an opening. The whole thing, from Fifth Master's prison stay to tonight's attack, was one long scheme by Lu Baoshan and Ma Rongqiang to break Fifth Master's operation apart. Fifth Master told Lin Sudong to warn everyone below to lay low and stay clean. They couldn't afford to give the other side anything to use against them. I asked Yuan Gang about the men from last night. His face fell. He told me he was sorry. We couldn't go after them right now. But he promised that when the time came, he'd kill Hao Chong to get revenge for me. I smiled and told him I believed him. Meanwhile, up at the hotel, Fifth Master told everyone to stay quiet for now. Little Dragon was furious and wanted to send someone to kill Chief Ma, but he didn't know the full picture. Fifth Master snapped at him and told him to stop acting like Yuan Gang, always wanting to solve everything with violence. Lin Sudong calmed things down. Fifth Master ordered everyone to avoid any conflict with Lu Baoshan's side until they figured out how to handle Ma. He also told Lin Sudong to be careful with the club, maybe even shut it down for a while since Ma kept raiding it. 10 days passed. Lu Baoshan and Ma didn't cause any more trouble. Yuan Gang and I healed up. Our stitches came out, though I was still a bit weak. Yuan Gang couldn't stand being cooped up in Old Huang's clinic anymore, so he decided to take me to the nightclub to finish recovering. We drove the Santana over to the Marriott nightclub. It was a 3-story building. Dance hall on the first floor, karaoke rooms on the second, and staff quarters plus Yuan Gang's office on the third. When we pulled up, a few guys standing outside smoking saw Yuan Gang and called out to him. He pointed at me and told them I was his brother. They should call me Brother Fei. They all said it in unison. I flinched. I'd never had that happen before. I just nodded awkwardly. We walked inside. The dance hall was huge, with a big stage at the back and disco balls hanging from the ceiling. Yuan Gang told me it only got lively at night and said he'd bring me down later to check it out. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The doors opened and Yuan Gang walked right into a woman. She stumbled and nearly fell, but I caught her arm. She looked up annoyed, then froze when she saw it was Yuan Gang. Her name was Wang Meiyuan. She managed all the girls at the nightclub and had been with Fifth Master's organization for years. Yuan Gang introduced me as his brother and told me to call her sister. He added with a goofy grin that I should stay on her good side, since she was in charge of all the pretty girls. Wang Meiyuan looked me over and seemed impressed. She said I was a good-looking kid. After she left, we headed to the office. Yuan Gang pushed open the door and a cloud of smoke poured out. Little Dragon and a few guys were inside smoking and playing cards. Yuan Gang's face dropped and he yelled at them, asking if they were running a crematorium in his office. They scrambled to put out their cigarettes. Yuan Gang told Little Dragon to open the windows before they all choked to death. Once the smoke cleared, Little Dragon asked why we'd come back so soon. Yuan Gang said Old Huang's clinic was boring and I was mostly healed, so he'd brought me here. Little Dragon asked about Lu Baoshan's people. No trouble from that side. But Chief Ma was still hounding Lin Sudong's club, which had been forced to shut down. Little Dragon couldn't understand why we were so afraid of one police chief. Yuan Gang told him to shut up, same words Fifth Master had used. You don't know anything. The truth about Secretary Lin was a secret only Fifth Master, Yuan Gang, and Lin Sudong shared. Then Yuan Gang changed the subject and gave me my first real job. He told Little Dragon that I'd be in charge of the first floor, the dance hall. Little Dragon would keep running the second floor, the karaoke rooms. Little Dragon was happy about it. He was busy enough already, and the first floor was just young people and small-time troublemakers. The real money and connections were on the second floor. That's where the wealthy clients went. Yuan Gang explained what the job meant. Keep order, watch out for drunk people starting fights, and look out for guys selling pills or drugging girls. It was an education. He told me not to worry. He had my back. Little Dragon went across the street and came back with food and cases of beer. He said the welcome dinner had been cut short by Lu Baoshan, so today he wanted to drink properly and put Yuan Gang on the floor. Yuan Gang downed his first bottle in seconds. Little Dragon handed me one too. I stared at it. I really didn't like the stuff. Little Dragon wouldn't let me off. Yuan Gang thought I was scared because of the Hao Chong ambush and told me it was safe here. But the moment he mentioned that night, my face went red, not from fear, but from the memory of waking up naked next to that girl. Yuan Gang looked at me, remembered the black hot pants, and sprayed his entire mouth full of food across the table. I wanted to shrink into nothing. We drank until 3 in the afternoon. All 3 of us ended up flat on the floor. At 7 that evening, Little Dragon shook me awake and told me it was time. People were coming in. I mumbled that I didn't want to get up. Half my brain was still asleep. Little Dragon laughed at my mumbling and pulled me off the floor. He brought me down to the first floor and introduced me to the guys working there. They all called out, "Brother Fei," in unison, which jolted me half awake. He pointed out 2 guys I'd be working with most. Jiang Xian, a stocky guy with a crew cut who looked 10 years older than he was, and Peng Yu, short and chubby with a mean face and a scorpion tattoo on his hand. Little Dragon told me to give them orders directly, then headed upstairs to handle the second floor. Peng Yu offered me a cigarette. I told him I didn't smoke and asked for water instead. We were chatting when Wang Meiyuan walked in through the front door. She asked why I was down here. I told her Yuan Gang had put me in charge of the first floor. She cursed Yuan Gang under her breath, said he always made other people do the work while he lounged around. Jiang Xian and Peng Yu went red, trying not to laugh. After she left, I asked Peng Yu if there was something going on between her and my brother. He looked surprised I didn't know. Apparently Yuan Gang had been chasing her for years, but she'd never said yes. Then the lights hit and the music blasted on. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The dance floor filled up and people started moving like they were being electrocuted. I stared at them, completely lost. I had no idea why they were shaking like that. Before I could figure it out, Jiang Xian tapped me and said there was a problem. 5 guys had just walked in. They were Lu Baoshan's men from the west side. The leader was someone called Big Yellow, and Jiang Xian had fought him before. I thought for a second, then leaned over to Peng Yu and told him to go tell Little Dragon and check if Yuan Gang was awake. Peng Yu wanted to skip all that and just rush over with some guys to beat them. I grabbed him and told him to stop. This was our place. They hadn't started anything yet. If we hit them for no reason in front of all our customers, nobody would ever come back. Jiang Xian nodded and said I was right. Peng Yu gave in and went upstairs. He came back and said Little Dragon was busy with VIP clients, but agreed, don't start anything first. Yuan Gang was still passed out drunk and wouldn't wake up no matter how much Peng Yu yelled at him. I told Jiang Xian to send a few guys over to watch them quietly. I was about to say something else when a bottle smashed on the floor. The whole dance hall went silent. It came from Big Yellow's group. Jiang Xian cursed. They were here to cause trouble after all. I felt my face harden. I told Jiang Xian and Peng Yu to follow me, and we headed straight toward them. We walked over. Jiang Xian got in Big Yellow's face first, asking what he thought he was doing smashing bottles in our place. Big Yellow played it cool, smiling, saying the bottle was fake alcohol and he was just a dissatisfied customer. He even spread his arms and raised his voice, acting scared, making sure all the other customers were watching, trying to make us look like the bad guys if we touched him. I pulled Jiang Xian back before he did something stupid. I stepped forward and told Big Yellow my name. His eyes went wide. He'd heard of me. Hao Chong had been asking around about me. He said Hao Chong sent his regards. I asked if Hao Chong was here. Big Yellow sneered and said our place wasn't good enough for his boss. I smiled and said the real reason was Hao Chong didn't dare come. Last time I chased him out like a stray dog, and he didn't even look back. That did it. One of Big Yellow's guys snapped and stepped forward to swing at me. Peng Yu kicked him so hard the guy hit the floor and didn't get up. Now they'd thrown the first punch in front of all the customers. I raised my voice and said anyone who came to drink was welcome, but anyone who came to start trouble got thrown out. I told our guys to clear them out. Jiang Xian had been dying for this. He led the charge, and in under a minute all 5 of them were on the ground, bleeding. I had them dragged outside like garbage. The customers barely reacted. Every nightclub has drunks who get thrown out. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian both told me they'd never follow anyone else after tonight. Little Dragon came down from the 2nd floor and asked where the troublemakers were. Peng Yu excitedly told him everything, how I'd baited them into swinging first so we looked clean. Little Dragon was impressed. He started to say something nice, but a massive crash cut him off. The front door of the nightclub exploded inward, glass flying everywhere. Hao Chong walked through with a knife in his right hand and dozens of men behind him. He screamed for Yuan Gang to come out and kneel. Little Dragon's eyes went wild. He cursed and told Jiang Xian and Peng Yu to grab weapons. They ran to a side room and came back with an armload of cleavers and iron pipes. Little Dragon snatched a cleaver, told someone to bring the 2nd floor guys down, and charged straight at Hao Chong. I grabbed a cleaver and followed right behind him. Jiang Xian, Peng Yu, and the rest came after us. Customers screamed and scattered. The dance hall turned into a battlefield. Little Dragon swung his cleaver at Hao Chong's head. Hao Chong dodged by an inch. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He ordered his men to attack. They swarmed Little Dragon just as the rest of us crashed into them. I dodged one slash and dropped a guy, but then an iron pipe cracked across my back and knocked me to the floor. Before I could get up, a blade cut into my arm. I screamed, looked up, and swung my cleaver sideways. It caught the guy across the face and opened his right cheek wide. Then I heard Hao Chong's voice right above me. He said he'd been looking for me. His blade came down toward my skull. I thought my head was about to split open, but someone behind me grabbed my collar and yanked me back just in time. The blade missed by nothing. I didn't look back to see who'd saved me. I scrambled up and charged at Hao Chong. He came at me too, screaming, swinging his cleaver down. I didn't even try to dodge. I blocked it with my arm and brought my own blade straight at his head. He jerked sideways just in time, but the cleaver caught his ear, slicing half of it off, and lodged into his collarbone. He screamed and swung his knife wildly, pushing me back. I grabbed a steel pipe off the ground and rushed him again. I swung for his head. He raised his arm to block, and I heard the bone snap, the same arm that had just come out of a sling. He dropped his blade and crumpled to the ground, rolling and howling. I moved in to finish him, but a gunshot froze everyone in the room. A man stood at the doorway with a shotgun, a 5-round pump. I recognized him from the night Liu Baoshan came to the hotel. His name was Lu Manjun. He screamed for everyone to kneel and threatened to shoot anyone who moved. Little Dragon stepped out of the crowd, pointed his cleaver at Lu Manjun, and told him to go ahead and shoot. Lu Manjun didn't hesitate. He fired into Little Dragon's thigh. Little Dragon went down screaming, his leg full of iron pellets. I was about to rush Lu Manjun when another gunshot cracked from behind me. Blood sprayed from Lu Manjun's shoulder, and the shotgun clattered to the floor. Yuan Gang walked out, reeking of alcohol, holding a replica Black Star pistol. He'd finally woken up. I called out to him. He told me to stay put and walked straight to Hao Chong, who was lying on the ground clutching his ear. Yuan Gang crouched down and smiled. "So you were looking for me?" Hao Chong tried to talk tough. Yuan Gang didn't let him finish. He raised the gun and shot him in the chest. Hao Chong stared in disbelief, coughing up blood. He never thought Yuan Gang would actually do it. I was stunned too. Yuan Gang stood up and walked to Lu Manjun. He mocked him, asked if he thought a shotgun was enough to come knocking on our door. Lu Manjun panicked, the arrogance from moments ago completely gone. Yuan Gang spoke calmly. He said they'd pushed him too far. Hao Chong ambushing us, Ma Rongqiang strangling the club, Lu Manjun showing up with a gun. He said Lu Baoshan must think he's untouchable now that he had Chief Ma behind him. Before, Yuan Gang had swallowed it because there was still money to make. But now they'd cut off every source of income. So what was the point of holding back? He told Lu Manjun to rest easy and promised Lu Baoshan wouldn't live much longer either. Then he pulled the trigger. Lu Manjun was gone. Yuan Gang turned to Hao Chong's remaining men and told them to go back to Lu Baoshan. Tell him to buy his funeral clothes. Yuan Gang was coming for him soon. He let them all leave. Then he came to me. I started to speak, but he cut me off. He said he didn't have much time. When the police came, I needed to make everyone pin everything on him. Then I should go find Fifth Master. He told me not to stay at the nightclub. Chief Ma would target me if I did. He said not to worry about him. Fifth Master would take care of things. He reminded me that I was his brother, and Fifth Master wouldn't let me down. My eyes filled with tears. I nodded. He wiped my face, hugged me, rubbed my head, and left. After he was gone, I steadied myself and called Jiang Xian and Peng Yu over. I told them to spread the word. When the police arrived, everything gets blamed on Yuan Gang. They both went quiet at the sound of his name, but they understood. I left through the back door, took a taxi to Old Huang's clinic to get my wounds wrapped, then went to the Marriott Holiday Hotel. Up on the 5th floor, Fifth Master was already sitting on his couch in silence. He'd gotten Yuan Gang's call and knew everything. His phone rang. It was Secretary Lin Xiangnan. "You've put me in a very difficult position," Lin said, sounding exhausted. Fifth Master paused, then said just 5 words. "He's my brother." I got to the hotel and took the elevator up to the 5th floor. Fifth Master smiled when he saw me. I started to tell him what happened at the nightclub, but he already knew everything. He told me Yuan Gang was already out of Jingzhou. He'd arranged for people to take him away. Yuan Gang had wanted to stay and go after Lu Baoshan, but Fifth Master wouldn't allow it. I let out a breath. I'd been afraid Yuan Gang would try to stay. Then Lin Sudong burst through the door, asking about Yuan Gang. Fifth Master told him everything. Yuan Gang killed Hao Chong and Lu Manjun, and he'd been sent away. Lin Sudong rubbed his face and sighed, saying Yuan Gang had been reckless. Fifth Master shook his head and said even a rabbit bites when cornered. This was what happened when you push a man too far. Fifth Master told us both to be careful. The war with Lu Baoshan was now out in the open. He told me to go back to the nightclub tomorrow, bring the girls over to the hotel, and send the guys to the club. Lin Sudong and I went downstairs to get rooms. We grabbed our keys and turned around, and there was Chief Ma Rongqiang walking through the hotel entrance, with Lu Baoshan and that yellow-haired kid right beside him. Ma asked where Qin Kuan was. Lin Sudong stepped forward and said Fifth Master was asleep. Lu Baoshan couldn't hold himself back. He snarled that 2 of his brothers were dead, and Qin Kuan could still sleep. Lin Sudong played innocent, told Lu Baoshan to report it to the police since Chief Ma was standing right there. Ma gave Lin Sudong 2 choices. Take them to see Qin Kuan, or he'd come back with officers and guns to arrest him. Lin Sudong called upstairs. Fifth Master said to bring them up. I stayed outside the office with the yellow-haired kid. Lin Sudong went in with Ma and Lu Baoshan. Inside, Fifth Master didn't stand up. He just sat there smoking his cigar and greeted Ma casually. Lu Baoshan demanded to know where Yuan Gang was. Fifth Master shrugged and said maybe he'd gone to find a woman. Ma told Fifth Master to hand Yuan Gang over. Fifth Master asked if Ma had been drinking. Lu Baoshan threatened to burn everything down. Fifth Master exploded, told Lu Baoshan to shut up, that he wasn't even on the same level and had no right to speak. Ma sat down across from Fifth Master, lit one of his cigars, and said it wasn't negotiable. He said even Lin Xiangnan couldn't protect him anymore. That changed things. Ma had named Secretary Lin directly, meaning there was no room to maneuver. Fifth Master's eyes narrowed. He mocked Ma's police uniform, said he really did justice to it. Ma ignored the sarcasm and asked again, hand over Yuan Gang or lose everything in Jingzhou. Fifth Master refused without hesitation. He said if he handed over one person today, tomorrow they'd want another, and the day after they'd want him. He said Yuan Gang was nearly 40 years old with his own mind. He wasn't Fifth Master's son to command. Ma stubbed out the cigar on the table and smiled coldly. He said if he didn't see Yuan Gang tonight, Fifth Master would have nowhere left to stand in the entire city. Fifth Master slammed his palm on the desk. He leaned forward, his eyes cutting like knives. He told Ma that even a rabbit bites when cornered, and he wasn't a rabbit. He was a tiger with a mouth full of fangs. He said if Ma wanted to come for him, he was welcome to try. Ma stared at Fifth Master and said he'd rip out every one of those fangs. Then he left with Liu Baoshan. Lin Sudong suggested calling Secretary Lin, but Fifth Master shook his head. Ma's connections were at the provincial level. Secretary Lin couldn't help. He told Lin Sudong to forget about sleep. We needed to go to the nightclub right now and bring everyone back to the hotel. Lin Sudong came out and tapped my shoulder. I followed him downstairs, got in the car, and we headed for the nightclub. On the way, he called Li Wenqi to arrange vehicles to help move people. He was still on the phone when a car came flying out of a side street and slammed into our right side. Lin Sudong yanked the wheel, but it was useless. Our car flipped over. My face was covered in blood. The stitches on my arm had ripped open again. The pain turned my skin white. I called for Lin Sudong. No answer. He was slumped over, unconscious. I heard footsteps outside. Through the shattered windshield, I saw two men walking toward us carrying spears. I grabbed a shard of glass and crawled out of the wreck. The moment I stood up, I heard a familiar voice. It was the yellow-haired kid from Liu Baoshan's crew. He laughed and pointed his spear at me, mocking me. I called him a dog and said they were fighting dirty. He laughed harder and said this was how things worked. Nobody sends a formal invitation before trying to kill you. He yelled at the other guy, a man in his 30s called Old Sue, and they both rushed me. I dodged Yellowhair's thrust and swung the glass at his neck. He twisted away just in time. Then both spears came at me at once. I couldn't dodge both. I turned my body sideways and smashed the glass toward Yellowhair's face, forcing him to pull back. But Old Sue's spear drove straight into my lower back. I groaned. Blood poured through my fingers. I was done. My body hadn't even healed from before, and now I was bleeding from everywhere. I had nowhere to run. They closed in from both sides. I closed my eyes. Yuan Gang's face filled my mind. I whispered, "Brother, I'm sorry." Then a gunshot cracked through the air. Old Sue's knee exploded in a spray of blood, and he dropped. Yellowhair panicked, threw down his spear, and ran. A second shot. Old Sue's head snapped back, and he went still. A bullet hole right through his skull. I stared, frozen. Behind me, Lin Sudong staggered out of the overturned car, holding a replica Black Star pistol. The crash had knocked him out. He hadn't heard me calling. When he finally came to, he heard Yellowhair's voice and found the gun he always carried. He'd shot Old Sue through the car window, first the knee, then the head. He called my name and told me to get him out of there. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. I tried to stand, but the wound in my back sent a bolt of pain through me. Cold sweat covered my forehead. I clenched my teeth, dragged myself up, and got to his side. His left collar was soaked in blood from a head wound. He leaned against me, said his head hurt, and his legs wouldn't work. I held him up, and we limped away into the dark. Back at the hotel, Fifth Master tried calling Lin Sudong's phone. No answer. He called again and again. Nothing. His heart sank. I didn't know most of what happened that night until later. But this is how it went. Right after Fifth Master couldn't reach Lin Sudong, Li Wenqi called in. He said he'd been on the phone with Lin Sudong when it sounded like a car crash. Then the line went dead. Fifth Master told him to send everyone out to find Lin Sudong immediately. They found the car, flipped on its side, blood inside, glass everywhere, and a dead body next to it. Someone recognized the corpse as one of Liu Baoshan's men. But Lin Sudong and I were gone. Li Wenqi called Fifth Master with the news. Fifth Master's phone slipped out of his hand. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a second. He picked the phone back up. His voice was flat and cold. He said 3 words, "Kill Liu Baoshan." Li Wenqi and Lu Jin gathered over 300 men and marched straight into the west side of the city. They smashed everything Liu Baoshan owned: karaoke bars, dance halls, gambling dens, destroyed them all, and sent every person inside to the hospital. Liu Baoshan and Ma Rongxiang both kept calling Fifth Master's phone. He watched it ring and didn't touch it. Not once. Then Secretary Lin Xiangnan called. Fifth Master picked up. Lin Xiangnan asked him what he thought he was doing. Fifth Master's voice was empty. He said, "My brother is gone." Lin Xiangnan was confused. He thought Yuan Gang had escaped. Fifth Master said he meant his other brother, Lin Sudong. Lin Xiangnan told him to pull his men back before the whole city went up in flames. Fifth Master snapped. He called Lin Xiangnan by his full name. "No more, Secretary Lin." He said he'd spent half his life building everything, and he only had 2 real brothers. One was on the run, the other was dead. And now Lin Xiangnan wanted him to stop? Lin Xiangnan tried to reason with him, worried about the fallout reaching his own position. Fifth Master cut him off. He told Lin Xiangnan not to worry. He'd never drag him into it. Then he hung up and stopped answering. Lin Xiangnan, unable to reach Fifth Master, called Ma Rongxiang instead. He made a deal. He told Ma that if Liu Baoshan stood down and didn't fight back, they could have the South Side's gambling operation, Fifth Master's territory. Lin Xiangnan was giving up on Fifth Master. Ma called Liu Baoshan and ordered him not to retaliate. Liu Baoshan was furious. His own turf was being torn apart. But Ma told him something that changed his mind. The South Side gambling ring, the thing Fifth Master had spent his whole life protecting, was being handed over. That was enough to make Liu Baoshan swallow his pride and tell his men to stand down. Li Wenqi and Lu Jin tore through the west side all night, smashing everything Liu Baoshan owned. But Liu Baoshan himself never showed his face. Fifth Master figured out why. Lin Xiangnan had made a deal behind his back. He told Li Wenqi to bring everyone home. Then Fifth Master called Yuan Gang. He tried to tell him about Lin Sudong and me, but he could barely get the words out. He finally said we were gone. Dead. Yuan Gang went silent. Then his voice turned ice cold. He asked who did it. Fifth Master said Liu Baoshan. He told Yuan Gang everything that had happened. The attack, the raid on the west side, Lin Xiangnan turning on them. Yuan Gang said he was coming back. Fifth Master tried to stop him. He was still wanted for killing Hao Chong and Lu Manjun. But Yuan Gang said one was his brother, the other was his little brother. If he couldn't come back to avenge them, he'd never sleep again. He said his life was already worthless. He'd lived enough. Then he hung up before Fifth Master could say another word. Fifth Master sat there with tears running down his face. He'd actually called to say goodbye, to settle his affairs, and tell Yuan Gang about money he'd set aside for him. He knew he probably wasn't going to survive what was coming. With Ma Rongxiang against him and Lin Xiangnan gone, there was no hope left. But Yuan Gang hadn't given him the chance to say any of it. Exhausted from everything, Fifth Master fell asleep on the couch. Li Wenqi and Lu Jin came back, but the bodyguard kept them outside so Fifth Master could rest. Then Li Wenqi got a phone call. Ma Rongxiang had seized the Royal Club. Before he could process that, the hotel receptionist ran upstairs in a panic. Inspectors from every government bureau were downstairs. Commerce, health, labor, along with police. They were shutting down the hotel too. Li Wenqi punched the wall. Lu Jin cursed. Fifth Master came out and asked what was happening. They told him everything. He didn't flinch. He just said 3 words. Let them search. He told Lu Jin to go find a place for Wang Meiyuan and the girls from the nightclub. He told Li Wenqi to call the club staff and have them come to the hotel. That was all. No anger, no panic. Just quiet orders. Meanwhile, what Fifth Master didn't know was that Lin Sudong and I were still alive. I dragged Lin Sudong through the dark streets until I found a small clinic. The doctor was asleep. I pounded on the door until he opened it, and the moment he did, I shoved Lin Sudong's gun in his face. He nearly wet himself. He stitched me up with shaking hands. I was sitting there with the gun pressed against his side while he worked on my arm. He begged me to move it, said he couldn't stop trembling with a weapon against his kidney. I told him to relax. I wasn't going to shoot unless he gave me a reason. He asked what would happen if it went off by accident. The stitches came out crooked. I looked at my arm and told him it looked like embroidery gone wrong. But Lin Sudong was still unconscious on the other bed, and I was in no position to complain. While I was messing with the doctor, Lin Sudong groaned and opened his eyes. He called my name. I shoved the doctor aside and rushed over. Lin Sudong looked around and asked where we were. I told him it was some kind of clinic. I didn't really know either. He didn't care about his injuries. He just wanted a phone. The doctor pointed to a landline on a desk nearby. Lin Sudong tried to stand, but nearly collapsed. The doctor said his shin bone was probably cracked. I glared at the doctor for not mentioning it sooner. Lin Sudong gave me the number and I dialed it, with the doctor teaching me how to use the phone since I'd never made a call before. Fifth Master picked up. His voice was rough and exhausted. When I said it was me, he went completely silent for a moment. Then he almost shouted my name and asked if I was okay. I told him I was a little banged up, but fine. The doctor rolled his eyes. I'd been stitched up so many times I looked like a rag doll. Fifth Master asked about Lin Sudong. I told him the leg bone was cracked and he couldn't walk. Fifth Master let out a long breath and said the leg would heal. He asked where we were. I didn't know, so I pointed the gun at the doctor and told him to yell the address. The doctor's legs had gone so weak he could barely stand. I called him useless and told him to just shout it. After that, Fifth Master said he'd send someone. What I didn't know was that Fifth Master had already told Yuan Gang we were dead. He'd been ready to give up, to settle his affairs, and accept the end. But when he heard my voice on the phone, everything changed. The sky cleared for him, just a little. I waited at the clinic with the gun aimed at the door. When someone knocked, I made the doctor open it. A man stood there with a hat pulled low over his face. I pointed the gun at him and asked who he was. He looked up and grinned. Miss me? It was Yuan Gang. I froze. Then I yelled, "Brother," and ran straight into him. He caught me, hugged me tight, and rubbed my head. He joked that I'd learned how to use a gun. I asked why he came back. He said the women in the next city over weren't pretty enough, so he came home. He didn't tell me the real reason. He went inside and found Lin Sudong on the bed. Lin Sudong asked why he'd come back. Yuan Gang said he came to burn paper offerings for him. Lin Sudong ignored the joke and asked about the situation. Yuan Gang sighed and told him the truth. Secretary Lin Xiangnan had switched sides. After Fifth Master thought Lin Sudong and I were dead, he'd sent hundreds of men into the west side to destroy Lu Baoshan. Lin Xiangnan panicked about the chaos reaching him and called Fifth Master to pull back. Fifth Master was too far gone with grief. He refused and called Lin Xiangnan by his full name. They broke apart completely. So Lin Xiangnan cut a deal with Ma Rongqiang instead. Lin Sudong cursed and blamed himself. If he'd contacted Fifth Master sooner, none of this would have happened. Yuan Gang shook his head and told him it wasn't his fault. He and I had nearly died. Nobody could blame us for that. Then the doctor, who'd been cowering in the corner this whole time, finally worked up the courage to ask when we were planning to leave. The doctor raised his hand like a school kid and asked when we were leaving. Yuan Gang walked over, patted his shoulder, and thanked him. The doctor started saying we should hurry up and go, but then Yuan Gang pulled out a thick stack of cash, 3,000 or 4,000, and stuffed it into his hands. The doctor's tune changed instantly. He said we could stay as long as we wanted, while frantically shoving the money into his pockets. I rolled my eyes at him. A car horn honked outside, and I whipped out the gun. The doctor nearly fainted again and tried to give the money back. Yuan Gang told me to relax. He opened the door. It was Old Huang in a beat-up van that looked ready to fall apart. Old Huang came inside, saw my stitches, and asked if I'd been practicing embroidery on myself. He looked at the doctor's work, shook his head, and told everyone to load up. We put Lin Sudong in the van and left. We didn't go back to the hotel. We drove to a farmhouse out in the countryside. I asked why we weren't going to the hotel, and Yuan Gang smacked my head. I'd forgotten he was still wanted for murder. Over the next couple of weeks, everything fell apart. With Secretary Lin gone, Ma Rongqiang and Lu Baoshan went after Fifth Master with everything they had. They seized the hotel, the club, all of his properties. Government agencies ran joint raids across the entire south side. They arrested nearly half of Fifth Master's people. Li Wenxi and Lu Jin both had to go into hiding. Lu Baoshan sent his own men into the south side to crush whoever was left. The goal was simple: force Fifth Master to surrender. But Fifth Master refused every phone call. He wouldn't bend. At the farmhouse, Old Huang looked after Lin Sudong's leg. Yuan Gang cooked for everyone. Badly, but it was food. There were 5 of us. Me, Yuan Gang, Lin Sudong, Little Dragon, and Old Huang. 3 of us were wounded. Old Huang was the doctor. So Yuan Gang got stuck with the cooking. Then Lu Jin showed up at the door one day. Ma Rongxiang's arrests had gotten out of control, and Fifth Master had sent him to hide with us. Yuan Gang cursed, and swore he'd kill Ma eventually. That night over dinner, Lu Jin asked how long we were going to keep hiding. Yuan Gang said he didn't know. We'd wait for word from Fifth Master. Then Lu Jin said something that made the whole table go quiet. He suggested maybe we should just give in. Little Dragon slammed the table and screamed at him. He asked if Lu Jin had lost his mind, if he'd forgotten everything Fifth Master had done for him. Yuan Gang reached over, lifted Lu Jin's chin so he had to look him in the eye, and asked the same question. Had Fifth Master ever treated him badly? Lu Jin shook his head and said Fifth Master had never treated him badly, but he was sick of hiding. Yuan Gang slapped him across the face and asked where that attitude was when times were good. Lin Sudong heard the commotion from his bed in the back room and called out. Yuan Gang grabbed Lu Jin by the collar and dragged him in there. He shoved Lu Jin forward and told him to repeat what he'd said. Lin Sudong frowned and told Yuan Gang to stop pushing him. Lu Jin and Li Wenqi were his guys. He'd brought them up himself. But when Lu Jin finally admitted he'd said they should give in, Lin Sudong punched him in the shoulder. He reminded Lu Jin that he'd been the first one promoted out of the 3 juniors. After everything Fifth Master and the rest of them had done for him, this was what he came up with when things got hard. Lu Jin stood there with his head down, saying nothing. Lin Sudong told him to go eat and think about what he'd said. Lu Jin walked past the dinner table without stopping and went straight to bed in another room. Little Dragon muttered, "Traitor," at his back. Yuan Gang smacked Little Dragon across the head and told him to shut up and eat. I piled on and teased Little Dragon. So he jumped on me and we rolled around on the floor wrestling. It lightened the mood a little. After dinner, Yuan Gang and I were sitting in the yard looking at the stars when his phone buzzed. It was Fifth Master. He sounded relaxed, asking if we'd eaten. Yuan Gang said we had, and that he was watching the stars with me. Fifth Master asked about my injuries. Yuan Gang said I was mostly healed. Then Fifth Master's voice changed. He said if I was well enough, I should come along tonight. He was ready to make a move. He was done waiting. He said Ma Rongxiang thought his connections made him untouchable, so Fifth Master would go all in and see if Ma dared to bet his life. Even if it meant leaving Jingzhou forever, he'd take a piece of Ma with him on the way out. Yuan Gang was excited. He said he wanted to deal with Ma personally. Fifth Master told him to calm down. He started laying out the plan. Yuan Gang and I would grab our weapons, go meet up with Li Wenqi and Lu Jin, and then Yuan Gang interrupted. He said Lu Jin was already here with us. Fifth Master went silent. Then his voice went cold. He said he hadn't sent Lu Jin to us. Yuan Gang's stomach dropped. Lu Jin had showed up that afternoon saying Fifth Master sent him, even bringing medicine for Lin Sudong. He'd been coming every few days with supplies, so nobody questioned it. It's bad, Yuan Gang said. Fifth Master cursed. Lu Jin had sold us out. He told Yuan Gang to get out of there immediately. Yuan Gang hung up and pulled his gun. I didn't understand what was happening, but when I saw him draw, I pulled mine too. He kicked open the bedroom door. Little Dragon and Lu Jin both jumped up. Little Dragon clutched his chest and said Yuan Gang had scared him half to death. Yuan Gang ignored Little Dragon. He grabbed Lu Jin by the collar, lifted him up, and shoved a gun against his head. He asked him what he'd done. Little Dragon didn't understand. Yuan Gang told him to help me and Old Huang get Lin Sudong into the van. We had to leave now. Little Dragon put it together instantly. He turned around, slapped Lu Jin across the face, and called him a traitor. Yuan Gang told him to stop wasting time. Little Dragon and I went to get Lin Sudong. I carried him on my back while Little Dragon and Old Huang held him from the sides. Yuan Gang stayed behind with Lu Jin. He pressed the gun to his head and asked why. Lu Jin didn't even look sorry. He said we couldn't beat Ma Rongxiang and we should just give up. Yuan Gang pistol whipped him across the skull, grabbed his hair, and dragged him outside. Lin Sudong saw Lu Jin being dragged out and understood immediately. He just couldn't bring himself to believe it. Lu Jin was his guy. He'd raised him up from nothing. I got Lin Sudong to the van and was lifting my foot to climb in when 2 vans came screeching around the corner, headlights blinding us. Little Dragon screamed a warning and shoved me into the vehicle. A shotgun blast tore into the side of the van. Little Dragon pulled a 5-round pump from under the passenger seat and fired back, shattering the windshield of the lead car and stopping both of them dead. The yellow-haired kid, his name was Lu Hao, jumped out with his own shotgun and fired at Little Dragon. Over a dozen men poured out with cleavers and charged at us. Little Dragon ducked behind the door, dodged the blast, and fired into the group. 2 men in front dropped screaming. Yuan Gang used Lu Jin as a human shield, held him by the hair with one hand, and started firing his pistol with the other. The replica Black Star was no joke. Unlike the shotguns that just peppered you with iron pellets, this thing killed if it hit anything vital. Lu Hao ducked behind his car and didn't dare show his face. Then 2 more vehicles came around the corner, with police lights flashing. Yuan Gang's face changed. Ma Rongxiang had sent police alongside Lu Baoshan's thugs. Yuan Gang yelled for Old Huang to drive. Old Huang started the engine and floored it, but Yuan Gang and Little Dragon didn't get in. I jumped out of the moving van. Yuan Gang yelled at me, asking what I thought I was doing. I told him if he wasn't leaving, neither was I. The police used a megaphone, ordering Yuan Gang to surrender. Yuan Gang cursed and smashed Lu Jin's head with the gun again. Lu Jin said he'd been merciful. If he hadn't asked them to wait, they would have come that afternoon. He told Yuan Gang to just give in. Little Dragon nearly lost his mind. He jammed the shotgun barrel into Lu Jin's mouth and almost pulled the trigger. Yuan Gang stopped him, said don't waste bullets. I called out that people were moving toward us. Police with guns were creeping closer. Little Dragon didn't wait. He fired a blast that pushed them back. The megaphone started up again, telling Little Dragon to surrender peacefully. Lu Hao yelled at the police to just rush us and kill us. The cop next to him told him to shut up. Yuan Gang turned to Little Dragon and me. He said we should run west toward the cornfield while he covered us. Little Dragon refused, said he wasn't afraid to die. I refused too. I told them to go first and I'd stay behind. Yuan Gang got angry. He said this wasn't the time to argue about who stays. We needed to get as many people out as possible. Nobody moved. Little Dragon and I were both too stubborn. Yuan Gang looked like he wanted to strangle us both. Then Little Dragon looked up. His expression turned serious. He told Yuan Gang to trade guns with him. Take the shotgun, give him the pistol. Then he said Yuan Gang should take me and go. Yuan Gang cursed at Little Dragon and told him he was family too. He wasn't leaving him behind. Little Dragon shook his head and pointed at his leg. The shotgun blast from Lu Manjun had healed enough for walking, but he couldn't run. If he came with us, he'd slow everyone down. Yuan Gang said then nobody was leaving. Little Dragon got desperate. He said if we all stayed, who would be left for Fifth Master? Then I saw the police creeping forward again. There was no time to warn the others. I just pulled the trigger. It was my first time firing a gun. The recoil shocked me, and I had no idea where the bullet went. Yuan Gang and Little Dragon both jumped. While Yuan Gang was distracted, Little Dragon snatched the Black Star out of his hand and shoved the shotgun at him. Yuan Gang tried to argue, but Little Dragon pointed the pistol at his own head. That ended it. Yuan Gang's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Little Dragon one last time. Little Dragon smiled, took Lu Jin from him, and said nothing more. Yuan Gang pulled me away. We backed up slowly toward the cornfield. Lu Jin tried to shout and give us away, but Little Dragon smashed the pistol into his mouth, knocking out 2 teeth. He grabbed Lu Jin's throat and called him a devoted little traitor. Lu Hao heard the noise and charged out with his shotgun. Little Dragon popped out and fired. They traded shots. Lu Hao went down clutching his thigh, and Little Dragon's left arm was torn apart by pellets. Little Dragon laughed and screamed that he'd take anyone who came at him. 1 kill, and he'd break even. Anything more was profit. Nobody dared move after that. While Little Dragon held them off, Ma Rongxiang and Lu Baoshan arrived at the Marriott Holiday Hotel. They kicked open Fifth Master's office door and threw his beaten bodyguard inside. Then they dragged in someone else, Li Wenxi, beaten so badly he was unrecognizable. Lu Jin had given up his location too. Ma told Fifth Master not to bother counting on Yuan Gang either. We wouldn't survive the night. He asked if Fifth Master had any cards left to play. Fifth Master stared at him. He asked if Ma really intended to destroy everything. Ma shrugged and said he'd given Fifth Master chances. Fifth Master closed his eyes. When he opened them, the fight was gone. He asked what it would take to spare his brothers. Ma leaned in close. He said it was simple. Every business Fifth Master owned, plus both his legs. He wanted Fifth Master crippled, not dead. Worse than dead. Fifth Master's fists clenched. Then they slowly opened. He had no choice. Not for himself, for his brothers. For Li Wenqi lying broken on the floor. For Yuan Gang. For Little Dragon. For me. I agree, he said. His back bent. He looked like he'd aged 20 years in a second. Ma laughed. His men pulled out contracts they'd already prepared. Fifth Master stood up, walked to Li Wenqi, crouched down, and touched his face. He told Ma to bring the papers, but reminded him of the promise. Spare his brothers. Ma nodded and said Fifth Master was a real man. Meanwhile, Little Dragon sat slumped against a wall in the dark. Blood ran down his shredded arm and pooled beneath him. His face was white. He was fading, but he was still holding the gun, still watching, still buying us time. After Yuan Gang and I disappeared into the cornfield, Little Dragon held the line alone. I learned what happened later. He sat against the wall, bleeding badly, and asked Lu Jin for a cigarette. A match flared in the dark. Little Dragon took a long drag and asked Lu Jin if he had any regrets. Lu Jin said no. Little Dragon nodded and said he had one. He regretted not killing Lu Jin sooner, before he became a problem. Lu Jin's face went pale. Little Dragon smiled and said he didn't think he could hold on much longer. He asked Lu Jin to keep him company on the road to the other side. Lu Jin panicked. He begged Little Dragon to put down the gun and come out with him. Said he'd talk to the other side and make sure nothing happened. Little Dragon laughed bitterly and asked if Lu Jin believed his own lies. Then Little Dragon said something that stuck with me when I heard it later. He told Lu Jin that if he'd shown even a shred of remorse, Little Dragon might have spared him. But he hadn't. He was disappointed. He pressed the gun to Lu Jin's forehead. Lu Jin screamed his name. Little Dragon pulled the trigger. Blood sprayed across his face. The police and Lu Baoshan's men froze, unsure what had happened. Little Dragon screamed into the night. He said Lu Jin wasn't worthy of being called a brother. He yelled out the names of his real brothers: Qin Kuan, Yuan Gang, Lin Sudong, Li Wenqi Yufei. Not Lu Jin. Never Lu Jin. Then he whispered goodbye, put the gun to his own head, and pulled the trigger. Out in the cornfield, Yuan Gang suddenly stopped running. He turned and looked back. I could tell he'd heard something. 2 distant gunshots. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard, like someone had punched him in the chest. I asked what was wrong. He shook his head and told me to keep moving. We ran until our legs gave out. Yuan Gang tried calling Fifth Master. No answer. He tried Old Huang. Nothing. I spotted a faint light in the distance. A vehicle. Yuan Gang pulled me into a ditch by the road. It turned out to be a farm truck, not police. Yuan Gang flagged it down and told the driver we were brothers who'd gotten lost at night and had been walking in circles for hours. The driver thought we might have run into ghosts and offered us a ride. He was heading to the next city for a morning market. The hour-long ride on that rattling truck nearly turned our stomachs inside out. We both threw up the moment we got off. Yuan Gang thanked the driver and pushed a pack of foreign cigarettes into his hands. We found a breakfast shop nearby. Yuan Gang ordered fried dough sticks, soy milk, and tofu pudding. Then he pulled out his phone and called Fifth Master's number again. Someone answered, but it wasn't Fifth Master. It was Su Wenjia, Fifth Master's driver and bodyguard. Yuan Gang recognized his voice and asked where Fifth Master was. Wenjia's voice cracked. He started to speak, but couldn't finish the sentence. He was choking on tears. Yuan Gang's face changed completely. Yuan Gang shouted into the phone so loud the breakfast shop owner nearly dropped 2 bowls of soy milk into the fryer. I flinched and looked at him, not knowing what was happening. Su Wenjia told him everything. Fifth Master's legs were broken. Ma Rongqiang and Lu Baoshan had come to the hotel last night with Li Wenqi, who'd been beaten beyond recognition. To save the rest of us, Fifth Master signed over every property he owned. The hotel, the club, the nightclub, everything. Then Lu Baoshan broke both his legs. Yuan Gang's face went white. His hands were shaking. He said he was coming back immediately. Wenjia told him Fifth Master had forbidden it. Fifth Master said he'd already paid with his legs. He didn't want any more brothers paying with their lives. And if Yuan Gang didn't listen, Fifth Master would never call him brother again. Yuan Gang collapsed to the floor. I caught him. He grabbed onto me and sobbed. Loud, open, broken crying. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there and let him hold on. The breakfast shop owner looked annoyed at first, but when he heard how much pain was in that crying, he sighed and left us alone. After a while, Yuan Gang calmed down enough to tell me. Fifth Master's legs were shattered. Everything was taken. I said we should go back right now. Yuan Gang slowly shook his head. The shop owner came over and said we should eat. Fill our stomachs first, then deal with whatever needed dealing with. Yuan Gang looked up at him, nodded, and told me to sit down. We ate without tasting any of it. We wandered the streets of the neighboring city, lost. Yuan Gang said we'd find a place to stay and wait for Fifth Master's call. That night, in a cheap motel, we were lying on our beds staring at the ceiling when the phone buzzed. Yuan Gang grabbed it. It was Fifth Master. His voice was weak. Yuan Gang asked how he was. Fifth Master said he was fine and not to worry. Yuan Gang begged to come back, just to see him. Fifth Master said no. He said he was done fighting. Losing his legs had shown him things clearly. On this road, keeping your life was already more than you could ask for. Yuan Gang couldn't believe it. He asked if Fifth Master was really going to let it go. Then Fifth Master told him about Little Dragon. He was dead. Yuan Gang shot off the bed. I sat up too, gripping the sheets. We both assumed Little Dragon had been captured alive. Fifth Master said Little Dragon killed Lu Jin first, then turned the gun on himself. His voice carried a deep hatred when he mentioned Lu Jin's name. To Fifth Master, the traitor was worse than Ma Rongqiang and Lu Baoshan combined. Yuan Gang stood there with his mouth open, unable to speak. Fifth Master kept talking. Yuan Gang just listened, frozen, until the call ended. I walked over and asked about Little Dragon. Yuan Gang looked up at me with bloodshot eyes and said Little Dragon was gone. My legs went weak. Tears rolled down my face. After Fifth Master and Yuan Gang, Little Dragon was the person I'd been closest to. We were around the same age. We played cards together, wrestled on the floor, joked around during those days at the farmhouse. Just yesterday, he was right there beside me. And now he was gone. Yuan Gang suddenly pulled me up and said we were going out. I was still crying, but I followed him out of the motel. That night, the streets were empty and silent. Yuan Gang brought me to a funeral supply shop and pounded on the door until the owner woke up cursing. Yuan Gang walked in, looked around, and told the man he was buying everything in the store. The owner thought he was joking. Yuan Gang told him again, everything. Paper money, gold paper ingots, paper offerings, all of it. He asked the owner to deliver it to a nearby intersection, just a few hundred meters away. The intersection faced the direction of Jingzhou City. The owner loaded everything onto a small tricycle cart. Yuan Gang and I helped push from behind. When we got there, Yuan Gang lit a match. The flame danced in the dark. He dropped burning paper into the pile, and the whole thing erupted. Fire reaching into the sky, lighting up the darkness around us. We stood there staring toward Jingzhou. Neither of us said a word. The fire was for Little Dragon. The next morning, Yuan Gang pulled me out of bed with bloodshot eyes. We ate breakfast, checked out, and I asked if we were going back to Jingzhou. He said no. I asked where then. He said Jiangbei City, a place in the next province over. He'd never been there either. Fifth Master had arranged it. He knew Yuan Gang wasn't the type to settle down quietly, so he'd contacted a friend there to give him a place to land. I started to complain about him always rubbing my head. I was about to say Little Dragon told me it would make me shorter. But halfway through the sentence we both went quiet. Little Dragon's name hung in the air between us. We didn't take a bus. We hired a private car because we were carrying guns and Yuan Gang was still wanted. Lin Sudong and Old Huang wouldn't be joining us. Fifth Master had arranged a separate place for Lin Sudong to recover, with Old Huang taking care of him. I felt low. I'd finally had people around me, brothers, friends, a family of sorts. Now it was back to just me and Yuan Gang. After more than 10 hours on the road, we arrived in Jiangbei City. The moment we stepped out, we both froze. This place was nothing like Jingzhou. Skyscrapers everywhere, neon lights, crowds, traffic, a real city. We wandered around gawking like country boys visiting the big world for the first time. Yuan Gang spat and cursed. He said his vision had been too small. Compared to this, Jingzhou was a village. We checked into a hotel and were stunned again. Compared to this place, the Marriott Holiday Hotel back home was tiny. We slept until noon the next day, would have slept longer if the front desk hadn't knocked asking about the room. When we finally went out, I stretched and asked what came next. Yuan Gang lit a cigarette and said we'd have some fun for a few days and wait for 2 people to arrive. He didn't say who. I didn't ask. Since Lin Sudong and Old Huang weren't coming, I didn't much care. We spent the next few days exploring every corner of Jiangbei City. Everything amazed us. Yuan Gang kept saying this was what the real world looked like. I had to agree. After the garbage heaps, the prison cells, and the blood, this felt like a different planet. 3 days later, Yuan Gang's phone buzzed under the pillow while we were sleeping. Someone said they'd arrived in Jiangbei City and couldn't believe how big it was compared to Jingzhou. Yuan Gang laughed and told them to take a taxi to our hotel. I asked who was coming. Yuan Gang just grinned and said I'd find out soon. A knock at the door. Yuan Gang opened it, and there stood Jiang Xian and Peng Yu. I shouted their names, genuinely happy. They were familiar faces, and right now that meant everything. They greeted me and came inside. Peng Yu started to bring up Little Dragon. The room went silent. Yuan Gang sighed and changed the subject, asking about Fifth Master. Jiang Xian said he was recovering, but the doctors had told him he'd never stand again. Yuan Gang's fists tightened. I could feel the mood sinking, so I said I was hungry. Yuan Gang caught on immediately and suggested we go eat. A welcome dinner for the 2 of them. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian played along, and just like that we were out the door. Yuan Gang told them to order whatever they wanted and not to hold back. Peng Yu grinned, grabbed the menu, tossed it straight to the waitress without even opening it, and said, "Cook the whole book." Everyone froze. The waitress, Yuan Gang, Jiang Xian, me, all staring at him. Yuan Gang rubbed his temples and said maybe he couldn't afford to keep Peng Yu around. Jiang Xian agreed seriously, saying if Peng Yu stayed we'd all go hungry. I called the waitress over and asked her to call a taxi. That was the last straw. Peng Yu snatched the menu back, grumbling that it was just a joke. We ended up ordering 6 dishes and 4 cases of beer. My head hurt just looking at it. A few bottles in. Things were going well until the room next door got unbearably loud. Yuan Gang tried to be patient. We were new in town and didn't want trouble. He sent the waitress over to ask them to keep it down. She went once. Nothing changed. The noise got worse. They were slamming the walls now. Yuan Gang sent her again. This time they smashed a bottle over her head. Blood ran down her forehead. Then 7 or 8 of them dragged her by the collar to our door and kicked it open. A fat man with a tiger tattoo on his arm walked in shirtless, cursing at us, asking if we were the ones who kept sending complaints. Peng Yu was closest to the door. He didn't say a word, just spun around and smashed his beer glass into the man's face. The glass shattered, cutting Peng Yu's hand and shredding the guy's cheek. The man screamed. His crew charged at Peng Yu. Yuan Gang grabbed a bottle, hurled it without looking, and jumped in. I grabbed a bottle and smashed it over the head of a guy in a floral shirt who was pounding on Peng Yu's skull. The bottle exploded and the man dropped, blood leaking through his fingers. Peng Yu had gone wild. His nose was bleeding, his clothes were ripped to shreds, and he was slamming a chair into the tattooed man over and over. Yuan Gang knocked another guy down so hard he flew into the door and broke it off its hinges. He told Peng Yu to ease up before he killed the man. Peng Yu spat, kicked the guy one more time, and finally stopped. Yuan Gang told us to move. The floor was covered in bodies, 7 or 8 of them bleeding and groaning. He couldn't stick around. The police would be coming. He dropped money on the counter for our meal. The restaurant owner tried to stop us, saying he'd called the police and we had to stay and pay for damages. Peng Yu whipped around and screamed at him. We'd been minding our own business when those guys came looking for trouble. Yuan Gang didn't even look at the owner. He just waved for us to follow and walked out. Back at the hotel, Yuan Gang said we couldn't stay there anymore. The tattooed man was hurt badly and police would come asking questions. Big hotels were too visible. He sent me upstairs since my clothes were the cleanest. I grabbed both travel bags. Yuan Gang's had cash and the guns. Peng Yu's was stuffed with clothes. Checked out and met them downstairs. Yuan Gang said we were heading to Yang'an District. Jiangbei City had 4 urban districts and 5 suburban ones. Yang'an was where Fifth Master's friend lived. We took a taxi and had the driver circle a few main streets first to get a feel for the area. The buildings were nicer than Jingzhou, but nothing compared to the city center. There were pool halls, karaoke bars, internet cafes, and card rooms everywhere. But Jiang Xian noticed there were no big entertainment venues. No clubs, no nightclubs. The driver laughed and explained. Yang'an was chaos. It was like the Wild West. People had tried opening nightclubs before, but a fight would break out every few days. You couldn't even keep up with repairs, let alone run a business. As for the police, if you paid enough, they'd look the other way even if a murderer was standing right in front of them. We all looked at each other. This place made Jingzhou look civilized. Yuan Gang had the driver stop at a decent-looking hotel. We checked into 2 rooms, Yuan Gang and I in one, Jiang Xian and Peng Yu next door. After washing up and changing, we went to a kebab place across the street. Yuan Gang ordered 100-something skewers and 4 cases of beer. I winced. Peng Yu asked what the plan was. Yuan Gang said he'd meet Fifth Master's contact tomorrow and figure things out after that. Peng Yu nodded and said there were plenty of guys back in Jingzhou who wanted to follow Yuan Gang here. He and Jiang Xian had barely talked them out of coming all at once. Yuan Gang asked how many guys were ready to come. Peng Yu said at least a dozen, maybe more if they asked around. Yuan Gang nodded. Once we got our footing here, he'd bring them all over. Peng Yu said he'd send word back to Jingzhou and tell them to get ready. We drank well that night. No trouble found us this time, and we slept straight through to morning. Yuan Gang shook me awake and said we were going out. He needed to meet Fifth Master's contact, and he'd also forgotten to buy me a phone. We went to a breakfast place a few hundred meters from the hotel. Yuan Gang spotted someone in the corner and called out, "Brother Ji." A man in his 50s stood up and embraced him. His name was Ji Rong. He ran a dance hall and a card room in Yang'an and had some local reputation. Ji Rong told Yuan Gang that Fifth Master had already called him. He said Yuan Gang could do whatever he wanted in Yang'an, and if he needed help, just ask. Yuan Gang thanked him simply, said they'd let their actions speak. Ji Rong sighed, and said he felt ashamed he couldn't help Fifth Master when things fell apart. Yuan Gang's face darkened, but he told Ji Rong that Fifth Master understood. Ji Rong patted Yuan Gang's shoulder and said when the day came to go back and get revenge, he'd go with him. Ji Rong introduced 2 men with him, Qi Pengfei and Wang Xiaohua, his guys. Yuan Gang introduced me as his brother. Then Ji Rong asked what Yuan Gang planned to do here. Yuan Gang said he knew nightclubs, but he'd heard they couldn't survive in Yang'an. Ji Rong slammed the table so hard everyone in the shop jumped. He told us the story. Years ago, when he came back from Jingzhou, he'd built a nightclub just like the Marriott. Business was great, which made people jealous. One man in particular, a local troublemaker, sent people to wreck the place constantly. This guy was like a stray dog you couldn't shake. He wouldn't fight directly. He'd just send kids to smash things up. Ji Rong couldn't repair the place fast enough. Eventually the nightclub went under, and Ji Rong used what was left to open his current dance hall and card room. Yuan Gang asked if there was bad blood between them. Ji Rong said no. That was what made it worse. The man was just a shit-stirrer who couldn't stand seeing anyone else succeed. Ji Rong warned Yuan Gang that if he wanted to make it in Yang'an, he had to watch out for this man. His name was Li Erpi. He ran an arcade on West Street, and his crew was a bunch of teenagers with dyed red and green hair. Ji Rong called them traffic lights. Yuan Gang asked how a guy running an arcade could cause so much trouble. Ji Rong explained. Li Erpi's cousin was the deputy chief of Yang'an's police bureau. That's why nobody had ever taken him out. And the kids working for him were dangerous precisely because they had no sense of limits. They'd go further than grown men because they didn't understand consequences. Yuan Gang took it all in. Ji Rong said he'd think things over and invited us to dinner that evening as a welcome. After Ji Rong left, Yuan Gang ordered takeout, fried dough, steamed buns, and tofu pudding, and we carried it all back to the hotel. He told me to go wake up Peng Yu and Jiang Xian. I went next door and pounded on their door. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian shuffled and looking half dead, but Peng Yu perked up the instant he saw food. We sat around the small table eating buns and fried dough while Yuan Gang told them about meeting Ji Rong and the situation with Li Erpi. Peng Yu scoffed and said if that dog caused problems, he'd take out both Li Erpi and his deputy chief cousin. Yuan Gang shook his head. He said we weren't in Jingzhou anymore. Nobody here would cover for us. If we got into trouble, the only option was running. We had to think long-term. Jiang Xian agreed. I nodded too and asked what we were actually going to do. Yuan Gang said he had about 100,000 in cash. That wasn't enough for anything big, but it was enough to open a karaoke lounge, a step below a full nightclub. It was his specialty anyway, and karaoke places attracted wealthier clients. which meant better connections down the road. Peng Yu's eyes lit up. His first thought was about the girls who'd work there. Yuan Gang glared at him and told him to keep his hands to himself. Anyone who forced themselves on the girls would lose a leg. Jiang Xian shook his head and pointed out the place didn't even exist yet, and Peng Yu was already thinking about women. We all laughed. That evening, Yuan Gang brought the three of us to a restaurant called Yong'an House, the biggest and fanciest place in the district. Ji Rong was waiting outside with his two guys. Over drinks, Yuan Gang told Ji Rong he'd decided on a karaoke lounge. Ji Rong loved the idea. Then Yuan Gang asked about venues. Ji Rong thought for a moment and said he knew a spot on East Street, the best commercial strip in Yong'an. It used to be a restaurant, 2 floors, not tall but plenty of space. Perfect for a lounge. Yuan Gang's eyes lit up. It sounded ideal. Then Ji Rong's face darkened. He said there was a problem. Li Erpi had his eye on that same location. The backstory was ugly. The owner of the building was actually the boss of this very restaurant we were sitting in, Yong'an House. Li Erpi had sabotaged the man's old restaurant until it went under. Then Li Erpi tried to buy the space. The owner refused to sell to the person who destroyed his business. So Li Erpi put out word that anyone who dared take over that location would answer to him. Peng Yu couldn't hold back. He cursed and said the man had no shame, wrecking someone's business, then wanting their property and threatening everyone else on top of it. Yuan Gang asked if there was anywhere else. Ji Rong shook his head. Everything else was too far from the center, practically in the middle of nowhere. Peng Yu, with the beard doing his talking, said again that he'd just kill Li Erpi and his cousin. Ji Rong and his guys stared at each other, not sure what to make of this kid. Yuan Gang glared at Peng Yu and told him to shut up. Then he told Ji Rong he'd think it over. Ji Rong waved it off and said there was no rush. After that, nobody talked about the venue anymore. We just drank until well past midnight. Back at the hotel, Yuan Gang washed his face and asked me what I thought. Could we do it? I didn't hesitate. I said yes. I could see he'd already made up his mind. He just needed someone to push him. And I wasn't the clueless kid from prison anymore. I wanted to go back to Jingzhou and get revenge just as much as he did. But we needed strength first. This venue on East Street was the key to everything. If we couldn't get past a small-time troublemaker like Li Erpi, we had no business going up against Ma Rongqiang and Liu Baoshan. Yuan Gang grinned. He said if we couldn't handle one Li Erpi, we didn't deserve to show our faces in Jingzhou again. He reached up to rub my head, then stopped himself. He must have remembered what I'd said about Little Dragon telling me it would make me shorter. The next morning, Yuan Gang called Ji Rong and said he wanted to see the East Street property. Ji Rong couldn't believe it. Yuan Gang reminded him that even a starving camel was bigger than a horse. Li Erpi was nothing compared to what we'd been through. Ji Rong went quiet for a moment, then agreed. He'd been overthinking it. We met Ji Rong on East Street. He pointed at a building on the side of the road, 2 stories, wide and spacious, bigger than the old Marriott nightclub. The outside was in good shape, barely needed work. The location was perfect, busy street, lots of foot traffic, shops everywhere. Yuan Gang loved it. He'd actually noticed this building our first day in Yong'an, when we had the taxi driver circle the neighborhood. He'd wondered why a perfectly good restaurant was shut down. Ji Rong called the building's owner. A few minutes later, an Audi 100 pulled up. Seeing that car stung. It was the same model Fifth Master used to ride. The driver stepped out, a stocky middle-aged man in casual clothes with a thick gold chain. His name was Chen Jianghe. He owned Yong'an House, the big restaurant where we'd eaten the night before. Chen Jianghe didn't bother with handshakes or small talk. He asked straight away if Ji Rong had told us about the situation, meaning Li Erpi. Yuan Gang smiled and said yes, and it didn't matter. Chen Jianghe looked surprised. He turned to Ji Rong and asked if he'd really explained what kind of person Li Erpi was. Ji Rong patted Chen Jianghe's shoulder and said his brother here wasn't just anyone. Back in his own territory, Yuan Gang had operated at a much higher level than Ji Rong himself. Yuan Gang told Chen Jianghe he was impressed by his honesty. Most people would have hidden the Li Erpi problem to close the deal. Chen Jianghe shook his head and said it wasn't about being honest. He just didn't want to set someone up for trouble. Yuan Gang told Chen Jianghe not to worry. If he was ready to take on this business, he wasn't afraid of choking on it. Chen Jianghe shrugged and unlocked the front door. We all went inside. The place was impressive. The interior was as fancy as Yong'an House, and everything still looked new. Yuan Gang estimated each floor was about 1,500 square meters, 3,000 total. That was bigger than the old Marriott nightclub. But I could see something shift in his eyes. He was doing the math, and the money probably wasn't adding up. Chen Jianghe got emotional walking through his own ruined business. He cursed Li Erpi again. Ji Rong calmed him down. Chen Jianghe asked Yuan Gang what he thought. Yuan Gang said the place was great, but hesitated on the price. Chen Jianghe said he'd give it to us straight. 180,000, final price, already a loss for him. Yuan Gang nodded. It was fair. Without the Li Erpi problem, the place would have gone for over 200,000. But Yuan Gang was short, about 30,000 short. And that was just the building. Renovations, bribes, startup costs. All of that would need money too. While Chen Jianghe went to the bathroom, Ji Rong came over and asked if there was a problem. Yuan Gang admitted he didn't have enough. Ji Rong didn't blink. He asked if 50,000 would cover it. Yuan Gang started to refuse, but Ji Rong cut him off. He said helping Yuan Gang was helping himself. If Yuan Gang did well, so would he. He told Yuan Gang to stop being awkward and just take it. Yuan Gang accepted. He promised to pay it back within a month. Ji Rong waved it off and said there was no rush. When Chen Jianghe came back, Yuan Gang told him he'd take it. They went to handle the paperwork and transfer the money that same day. That night, Chen Jianghe invited everyone to dinner at a small, old restaurant with excellent food. Over drinks, he and Yuan Gang hit it off. Chen Jianghe was a straight-talking businessman, and Yuan Gang respected that. Chen Jianghe promised to bring friends to the karaoke lounge once it opened, and a man like him knew plenty of wealthy people. That was a bonus Yuan Gang hadn't expected. We drank until midnight again and stumbled back to the hotel. The next morning, Yuan Gang was up early making phone calls. I woke up staring at him, amazed. I asked how he managed to get up so fresh after drinking so much every night, when I felt like my body had been taken apart and put back together wrong. He slapped his lower back proudly and said it meant his kidneys were strong. I rolled my eyes. He pulled my blanket off and said we were finally going to buy me a phone. He'd been meaning to do it for days, but the venue business had gotten in the way. Then he glanced down and made a comment about my morning situation that made my face turn bright red. I yanked the blanket back. He laughed and said after the first attempt at the red light district had failed, he'd definitely find me a girl to fix that problem this time. After getting my new phone, we grabbed breakfast and headed back to the hotel. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian smelled the food and came running over like always. Yuan Gang told them to start calling Jingzhou today and get everyone ready to come. He said the property deal couldn't stay secret. Li Erpi would find out soon, and we needed bodies here before that happened. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian agreed. Yuan Gang was right. Li Erpi had already learned about the sale. He spent the night asking around about us. He didn't find out much, but he learned we were close with Ji Rong. In his mind, Ji Rong's level was nothing to worry about, so he made his decision. We were in our room making phone calls when someone started hammering on the door. None of us had told anyone our room number, not even Ji Rong. Before we could react, the door was kicked open and a group of teenagers with red and green dyed hair rushed in. The one in front had a nose ring and was holding a military bayonet. He asked which one of us was Yuan Gang. Yuan Gang said it was him. The kid cursed and charged at him with the blade. Peng Yu grabbed a stool and hurled it. Jiang Xian picked up our little dining table and threw it at the doorway. I jumped onto the bed, ripped the metal curtain rod off the wall, and started jabbing it at anyone who came near. More of them kept pushing in from the hallway. Red hair, yellow hair, purple hair, every color imaginable. They were just kids, 17 or 18, but they all had weapons, and they didn't hold back. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian couldn't risk going toe-to-toe with blades. My curtain rod got grabbed, and I couldn't pull it free. Yuan Gang picked up the fallen table and used it as a battering ram, shoving the whole group back toward the door. They couldn't hold against his strength. But one red-haired kid was fast. He stabbed his bayonet into Yuan Gang's shoulder before Yuan Gang could pull away. I didn't see it happen. I was behind him. But Peng Yu saw it from the side and rushed in with a pair of wooden chopsticks. Yuan Gang grunted and kicked the kid away to create distance. Then I saw it. Blood was pouring from his shoulder. Something inside me snapped. My vision went red. I reached for the travel bag on the bed, unzipped it, and pulled out the 5-round shotgun. I racked a shell and screamed at Peng Yu to move. He turned, saw what I was holding, and dove sideways. I pulled the trigger. In that tight space, at that range, the blast was devastating. Iron pellets sprayed out and dropped everyone standing at the front. Screaming filled the hallway. I didn't stop. I jumped off the bed and walked toward the door with the shotgun raised. The kids still standing turned and ran, leaving their wounded friends on the floor. I stepped into the hallway and fired again at the ones running away. Another one went down. Yuan Gang grabbed me from behind, holding his bleeding shoulder. He told me to stop. I told him to let go. I wanted to kill them all. My eyes were burning. I couldn't see anything except the direction they'd run. Yuan Gang hugged me tight and said his shoulder hurt. That was the only thing that could have reached me. The moment I heard those words, I stopped fighting. I turned around and looked at his wound, all the rage replaced with worry. Yuan Gang told Peng Yu to grab our bags. We had to leave immediately. The hotel would have called the police by now, and Yuan Gang couldn't afford to be found. We rushed out, and Yuan Gang called Ji Rong. His shoulder was bleeding, and he couldn't go to a real hospital. Ji Rong came with a van and took us to a small clinic. While Yuan Gang got stitched up, Ji Rong made some calls. When he came back, his face was serious. He said Li Erpi's cousin, the deputy police chief, was already out looking for us. Yuan Gang cursed. He hadn't expected Li Erpi to run crying to his cousin so fast. Ji Rong shrugged and said that's exactly why everyone called him a shit stirrer. It was what he did. Yuan Gang frowned. He was still wanted for what happened in Jingzhou. He couldn't show his face if police were actively hunting for us. Ji Rong drove us out to a farmhouse in the countryside that night. He told us to sit tight while he worked on finding a solution. After Ji Rong left, I walked up to Yuan Gang with my head down and apologized. I told him I shouldn't have fired the gun. He shook his head and said I wasn't wrong. Without those 2 shots, we would have been trapped in that hotel room. But then he got serious. He told me never to use a gun unless there was absolutely no other choice. He said guns don't just hurt the people you shoot, they hurt you too. I could tell he was afraid. Not of the gun itself, but of what I might become. He didn't want to lose me. I nodded and promised. Days passed with no word from Ji Rong, but the guys from Jingzhou arrived first. Over 20 of them showed up at the bus station. Yuan Gang told Peng Yu not to bring them to us. Too many people in one spot would draw attention. He said find them a place to stay and tell them to keep quiet. Then Ji Rong finally called. He sounded excited. He'd found a connection. The political commissar of the local police bureau, same department as Li Erpi's cousin, but a different person entirely. Ji Rong said being in the same system didn't mean they were on the same team. Yuan Gang was cautious, but agreed to set up a meeting. He trusted Ji Rong. That night, while Yuan Gang was in the outhouse, Peng Yu and Jiang Xian pulled me aside. They wanted to know if I thought this political commissar thing was reliable. I told them the truth. I had my doubts too. If Ji Rong could have connected with someone powerful enough to deal with Li Erpi, he would have done it years ago when his own nightclub was being destroyed. The fact that this connection was only appearing now didn't sit right with me. I wasn't the clueless kid anymore. I'd been watching and learning from Yuan Gang long enough to understand how these things worked. Something about this felt off. Peng Yu slapped his leg. He was glad I shared their concerns. Jiang Xian asked if we should make preparations, meaning position the Jingzhou guys nearby as backup. I hesitated. I didn't want to go behind Yuan Gang's back. But Peng Yu said Yuan Gang would never agree. It would look like we didn't trust Ji Rong. I told them to let me think about it. 2 days later, Ji Rong came to pick us up. The meeting was set. Yuan Gang had prepared 15,000 for the political commissar, 5 more than Ji Rong had suggested. Yuan Gang said business relationships shouldn't be one-time deals. Better to be generous now and build something lasting. Ji Rong was impressed. We went to a small restaurant tucked in an alley off East Street. Ji Rong had reserved a private room. I looked at the bottles of liquor on the table, and my stomach turned. I asked Peng Yu to grab me a juice from outside. While he was gone, the door opened, and a middle-aged man in sportswear walked in. This was Chu Jian, the political commissar of the Yang'an Police Bureau. Ji Rong greeted him warmly. Yuan Gang shook his hand. Chu Jian looked Yuan Gang over and said something that made the room go cold. He commented that Yuan Gang had barely arrived in Yang'an and was already firing guns. Nobody could tell if he was joking. Peng Yu came back with my juice and froze when he saw the stranger. Ji Rong broke the tension and got everyone seated. Ji Rong laid out the situation directly. He said Yuan Gang was just here to do business. Li Erpi had started the trouble, and we were hoping Chu Jian could help smooth things over. Chu Jian asked what kind of business. Yuan Gang said a karaoke lounge. Ji Rong explained about the property and how Li Erpi had made it personal. Chu Jian nodded but pointed out that using a gun changed things. Even if we weren't at fault, the shooting made us wrong. Ji Rong gave Yuan Gang a look. Yuan Gang picked up a shopping bag from under the table and placed it in front of Chu Jian. 15 neat stacks of 100 yuan bills. He said it was a donation to the Yang'an Bureau for their building fund, his way of making amends for the trouble. Chu Jian raised an eyebrow, took a sip of his drink, and then said he needed to step out to make a phone call. Something about telling his wife he was eating out. Ji Rong whispered to Yuan Gang that it was done. The commissar was probably calling the station to handle things. But 10 minutes passed, and Chu Jian didn't come back. Ji Rong got restless and stood up to go check. The door exploded inward. A skinny, sleazy-looking man walked in with 20 or 30 teenagers behind him. The red and green hair crew. Ji Rong's jaw clenched. He said 3 words through his teeth. Li Erpi. The rest of us understood instantly. Chu Jian hadn't gone to make a phone call. He'd set us up. He'd called Li Erpi. Li Erpi ignored Ji Rong completely. He turned to Yuan Gang and said he'd heard some outsider had come to Yang'an and shot his people. His eyes were vicious. Yuan Gang grabbed a bottle and told Li Erpi to say what he wanted. Li Erpi laughed, said we didn't have our gun this time, and ordered his people to attack. Before Yuan Gang could react, I flipped the table and yelled at Jiang Xian to help me block the door. Ji Rong understood instantly and called Qi Pengfei to push with us. But we were too slow. 5 of them got through before the table was in place. A steel pipe cracked across my back. Then a kid with a cleaver swung at my shoulder. Yuan Gang kicked him away just in time. The blade buried itself in the table instead of me. Yuan Gang smashed a bottle into another one's face, and Peng Yu grabbed a dropped cleaver and started swinging. I screamed at Peng Yu to make the phone call. He tossed the cleaver to Yuan Gang, pulled out his phone, and dialed. This was the backup plan. The one I'd worked out with Peng Yu and Jiang Xian behind Yuan Gang's back. We positioned the Jingzhou guys nearby, just in case. We held the door as long as we could, but there were too many of them. They kicked the table in half and poured through. Yuan Gang roared and charged into them with his cleaver. I grabbed a pipe and followed. I knocked one down. Then a blade caught my back. I felt the warm blood immediately. Another slash hit my shoulder. Cold sweat broke across my forehead. A pipe came flying straight at my face. I couldn't dodge. I closed my eyes. The hit never came. Someone grabbed me. A warm drop landed on my cheek. I opened my eyes and saw Yuan Gang holding me, blood running down from his forehead. He'd taken the blow meant for my face. He smiled weakly. I screamed his name. Another blade came down at him. Jiang Xian dove in and shoved the attacker away. Yuan Gang and I fell to the ground together. When I looked at him, his eyes were closed. He was out. Something broke inside me. I pulled the cleaver from his hand, stood up, and threw myself into the crowd. I didn't dodge anything. Pipes, blades, I didn't care. I just swung and swung. One kid nearly lost his head. The blade caught his chin instead, splitting it open like a second mouth. Li Erpi started to panic. Then he heard shouting from the restaurant entrance. Our Jingzhou guys came flooding in. Peng Yu screamed for them to cut down every last one. Li Erpi tried to run, but Jiang Xian caught him and put him on the floor with 2 slashes. It was over fast after that. Not one of Li Erpi's people was left standing. But I didn't stop. I kept swinging at the ones on the ground. Peng Yu bear-hugged me from behind, yelling at me to snap out of it before I killed someone. I thrashed against him. He squeezed so hard he nearly choked me out. Jiang Xian kicked him and told him he was strangling me. Peng Yu let go and I doubled over, gasping. I told them to go check on Yuan Gang. They ran over. Peng Yu said he was unconscious with a gash on his head. He needed a hospital right away. Ji Rong stepped forward. His face was heavy with guilt. He said he'd take Yuan Gang himself. He told Qi Pengfei to stay with me since we didn't know the area. He blamed himself. The commissar had sold us out, and it was Ji Rong who'd brought us to him. After Ji Rong left with Yuan Gang, we all looked down at Li Erpi, lying on the floor pretending to be dead. Peng Yu asked me what to do with him. I looked around. We'd torn the place apart, and the police still hadn't shown up. Li Erpi must have told them to stay away beforehand. But that wouldn't last. I told them to grab Li Erpi and move. We needed to get out of here first. At the clinic, I lay face down while a doctor stitched up my back. I asked Chi Pengfei how Yuan Gang was doing. He said nothing serious, but Yuan Gang had been taken to a real hospital because the gash on his head was deep. I told Chi Pengfei to call Ji Rong and ask if Yuan Gang could leave the hospital. The Yang'an Police Bureau would know by now that we'd taken Li Erpi. If they found Yuan Gang in a hospital, with everything he was already wanted for, he'd be finished. Peng Yu asked me what our next move was. I told him to scatter everyone. Send the Jingzhou guys to the countryside to hide. The local police were a dead end for us. The commissar had proved that. I had no plan. We'd have to wait for Yuan Gang to wake up. Chi Pengfei came back and said Ji Rong had already pulled Yuan Gang out of the hospital. They were heading to the farmhouse. We left the clinic immediately. Half an hour later, we arrived at the farmhouse. Ji Rong was outside, looking miserable. I asked where Yuan Gang was. He pointed inside. I ran to the room and found him on the bed, his entire head wrapped in bandages. I whispered his name. His eyes opened. His voice was rough and weak, but he said my name back. My eyes burned. Then he told me to call Lin Sudong. Tell him to come to Yang'an. I found his phone and dialed. Lin Sudong picked up half asleep. When I said my name, the line went quiet. Then his voice came back sharp and clear. He asked what happened to Yuan Gang. I told him everything that had gone down since we arrived in Yang'an. Then I told him Yuan Gang wanted him here. Lin Sudong said 3 words. Wait for me. Then he hung up. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian came in and asked about Yuan Gang. I told them he'd woken up briefly but was sleeping again. Peng Yu cursed and said he wanted to go kill Li Erpi. I stopped him. Jiang Xian kicked him and told him to stop being reckless. I told Peng Yu that Li Erpi was worth more alive right now. We'd wait for Lin Sudong. When they heard Lin Sudong was coming, both of them let out a breath. With Yuan Gang down, we needed someone who could think clearly and plan. Yuan Gang knew that too. That's exactly why he'd told me to make the call. Ji Rong came in and asked about Yuan Gang. I told him the same thing. He sighed heavily and said tonight was his fault. If it weren't for our backup guys, we'd all be dead in that restaurant. I shook my head and told him nobody blamed him. No one could have predicted the commissar would sell us out to Li Erpi. Then Ji Rong asked where the reinforcements had come from. I told him they were from Jingzhou, arrived a few days ago. He was surprised. I apologized for not telling him about them beforehand and made sure he understood it wasn't about distrusting him, just having a fallback plan. Ji Rong smiled and said if we'd told him in advance, he might have overthought it. But seeing how things played out, he just felt old. Then he suggested we lay low until the heat died down and leave Yang'an after that. In his mind, we were done here. The entire local police bureau was against us now, and you can't fight the government. I nodded at Ji Rong's suggestion to lay low, but I didn't agree about leaving Yang'an. I told him Lin Sudong was on his way. Ji Rong's eyes went wide. He knew Lin Sudong, 5th Master strategist, the brain behind everything. The fact that Lin Sudong was coming despite everything that had happened meant one thing. We weren't running. We were digging in. Ji Rong could feel it. Yang'an was about to change. For 2 days, none of us left the farmhouse. But we knew exactly what was happening outside. Li Erpi's cousin had mobilized the entire Yang'an Police Bureau to hunt for us. They'd even gone after Ji Rong, shut down his dance hall and card room. The whole district was buzzing with rumors. I kept asking Yuan Gang how he was feeling. He finally told me to stop. I'd asked 3 times in the last hour, and my questions were giving him a worse headache than the wound. Then his phone buzzed. Lin Sudong. He'd arrived at the village entrance. Yuan Gang told me to go get him. I jumped up to leave. He stopped me and made me take the Black Star. I said it was just the village entrance. He glared at me and said he didn't want to lose his brother over a few minutes of laziness. I tucked the gun in my waistband and ran out. At the village entrance, a Santana was parked by the road. A man stood beside it, hands on his hips, looking around. It was Lin Sudong. He smiled when he saw me and said I'd gotten dark from the sun. I noticed the car. It was Yuan Gang's Santana. Lin Sudong said his own car had been totaled in the crash, so he'd been driving Yuan Gang's. Then the back door opened, and Li Wenqi stepped out. I hadn't expected him, and Lin Sudong pointed at the passenger seat. Old Huang was in there too, just in case Yuan Gang's injuries were worse than we thought. I pressed my face against the window to peek at Old Huang. He rolled it down and snapped at me, asking what I was staring at. He wasn't a pretty girl. I grinned and told him he should change his name to Big Yellow, like a dog. He was about to explode, but Lin Sudong cut in and told everyone to get in the car. I directed them to the farmhouse. Lin Sudong walked in, saw Yuan Gang's bandaged head, and sighed. He asked if Yuan Gang had stumbled. Yuan Gang nodded and said he'd been stumbling non-stop since he got here, one fall after another, and he couldn't catch his breath anymore. Lin Sudong mentioned he'd called Su Wenjie recently. Fifth Master was doing well. He'd taken up reading books. Yuan Gang's eyes glistened when he heard that. He just said, "That's good." Then Lin Sudong got down to business. He asked who Yuan Gang had managed to offend. Yuan Gang said it without blinking, the entire Yang'an Police Bureau. Lin Sudong rubbed his forehead and said Yuan Gang really knew how to go big. Yuan Gang stared at him flatly and said if it were a small problem, why would he have called Lin Sudong here? Lin Sudong cursed under his breath and muttered that he must have owed Yuan Gang something in a past life. All he ever did was clean up after him. Yuan Gang ignored him completely, rolled over, and went to sleep. Lin Sudong walked out of the room, shaking his head. That night, after everyone else was asleep, Lin Sudong came back. They talked about how to break through. Yuan Gang asked if he had any ideas. Lin Sudong said 4 words. Money paves roads, liquor builds bridges. Yuan Gang asked which road. Lin Sudong said if they were going to put down roots here, they should plant them deep. Yang'an's soil was too shallow. He'd spend the next couple of days looking at the layer underneath, meaning he'd go above the local police bureau, straight to the city level. Yuan Gang frowned and asked if they'd brought enough fertilizer. This wasn't Jingzhou. Things cost more here, and small gestures wouldn't grow anything. The next morning, Lin Sudong left quietly with Li Wenqi. I asked Yuan Gang where they went. He just said they were handling business. I knew not to push. Meanwhile, the Yang'an police spent 3 days searching and didn't catch a single one of us. Li Erpi's cousin, Deputy Chief Chen Lisan, was furious. He expanded the search and even borrowed officers from neighboring districts. 2 days later, Ji Rong got word they were closing in on our farmhouse. Yuan Gang cursed and wondered if Li Erpi was actually Chen Lisan's secret son, not his cousin. Ji Rong told him to focus. We needed to move. Yuan Gang thought for a moment, then slapped his thigh. He said we should go back to the center of town. The police were searching outward, toward the edges. They'd never expect us to be right under their noses. Ji Rong thought it was risky. Yuan Gang said the most dangerous place was the safest place. That night, Qi Pingfei brought a van. 8 of us squeezed in. Me, Yuan Gang, Peng Yu, Jiang Xian, Old Huang, Ji Rong, Qi Pingfei, and Li Erpi as our prisoner. We crept back into the city center without hitting a single checkpoint. The police had all their roadblocks aimed at the exits. We split up. Yuan Gang, Ji Rong, and I took Li Erpi to a small hotel called the Ginkgo Inn. Peng Yu, Jiang Xian, and Qi Pingfei stayed at another place a few dozen meters away. Old Huang went off on his own. Yuan Gang didn't want him getting dragged into anything. For the next few days, it worked perfectly. Police swarmed the countryside while we sat in our rooms playing cards and drinking. Then on the 5th night, Qi Pingfei ran out of cigarettes. He snuck downstairs to buy some, and a local punk recognized him. There was a bounty on all of us. The punk called the police immediately. Chen Lisan came personally. I happened to be sitting by the window, doing what I always do at night, watching the stars. I noticed shadows moving along the building walls below. I looked closer and saw police uniforms. I woke Yuan Gang and Ji Rong. They scrambled to get dressed. But then I realized something strange. The police weren't heading toward our hotel. They were going toward the one where Peng Yu's group was staying. Yuan Gang figured it out at the same time. He grabbed the Black Star and said he'd go warn them. Ji Rong blocked him and tried to take the gun himself, saying he'd go create a distraction. While they argued, I slipped the gun out of Yuan Gang's jacket pocket, opened the door, and ran downstairs before either of them could stop me. I heard Yuan Gang scream my name, but I was already gone. When I hit the street, my body was shaking and my stomach was churning. I forced myself to run in the opposite direction from the police. I raised the gun and fired 2 shots into the air. The blasts tore through the quiet night. Every officer froze and turned toward the sound. They saw a figure running away from them into the darkness. Chen Lisan screamed for them to chase me. 7 or 8 officers broke off and ran after me. The rest stormed Peng Yu's hotel. I ran as hard as I could, ducking through alleys and side streets, but I couldn't shake them. A gunshot cracked behind me, and I felt the wind against my ear. The bullet grazed past my face, burning my skin. I threw myself around a corner, pressed against the wall, and fired back 3 times without looking. I had no idea where the bullets went, but it didn't matter. The officers scattered and dove for cover. That was all I needed. I ran again, disappearing into the dark. I ran until I couldn't hear anyone behind me. I stopped to catch my breath and called Yuan Gang. He picked up immediately, frantic. I told him I was fine and asked about Ping Yu's group. He said they'd all made it. When they heard my gunshots, they jumped from the second-floor window before the police reached them. Yuan Gang and Ji Rong had also escaped with Li Erpi and were hiding in a junkyard. I started to tell him where I was, but then I heard footsteps. I hung up and pulled the gun out. I was hiding in an abandoned shack. The footsteps got louder. It was the same officers who'd been chasing me. They were heading straight for my hiding spot. I crouched lower and gripped the gun, but it was no use. They kept coming closer. I bolted. Someone screamed for me to stop. Gunshots cracked behind me. Pain flared in my arm. I'd been hit. I clenched my jaw and kept running without looking at the wound. Then I hit a dead end. I pressed myself behind a big metal garbage bin in the corner. Blood was dripping from my arm onto the ground. I curled up as small as I could and prayed they wouldn't find me. But they did. They followed the blood trail right to the alley. They didn't rush in, though. They knew I had a gun. They called for backup. I pulled out my phone and called Yuan Gang. When he answered, I told him I couldn't get away. My voice was shaking. He asked where I was. I said I didn't know, but told him not to worry. I wouldn't let them take me alive. He panicked. He begged me not to do anything stupid. He said if they wanted to arrest me, let them. He'd get me out. He was crying. I'd never heard him cry like that, not even when Fifth Master lost his legs. A police car screeched to a halt outside the alley. A megaphone blared, telling me to drop the weapon and come out. Yuan Gang heard it through the phone. He begged me again. He said please don't make him lose another brother. I looked up at the stars. Little Dragon's face floated into my mind. I thought about what he'd done, the gun to his own head, the trigger pulled. For a moment, I'd been thinking the same thing. I took a long breath and told Yuan Gang I'd listen to him. He let out a shaky sigh and told me exactly what to do. Throw the gun away, raise my hands, walk out slowly, don't resist. I dropped the phone. I dropped the gun. I stood up, held my bleeding arm, and walked out of the alley. Flashlights hit me from every direction. Guns pointed at me. 2 officers rushed in, tackled me to the ground, and wrenched my arms behind my back. The pain in my shot arm was blinding, but I didn't make a sound. A man walked up and stood over me. Deputy Chief Chen Lisan. He asked my name. I told him. He turned around and said 2 words, take him. At the Yong'an police station, they bandaged my arm. It was just a graze, the bullet hadn't gone through. Then they brought me to an interrogation room. An officer started asking questions. Name, Yu Fei. Gender, male. Age, I don't know. He looked up, annoyed. He thought I was playing games. He slammed the table and told me I'd better cooperate. I told him I really didn't know my age. That just made him angrier. He dragged me to another room, cuffed me to a water pipe, and stripped off my shirt. He pulled out an electric baton, tested the switch, and smiled. Then he pressed it against my body. The shock locked every muscle in my body. I screamed. The officer didn't care about my screaming. He moved the electric baton to a different spot and hit the switch again. For half an hour straight, he worked me over. My chest and stomach were covered in burn marks. My body wouldn't stop shaking. He grabbed my chin and asked if I was comfortable now. I grinned back at him with blood all over my teeth. I'd bitten through my own lips, trying not to scream. He called me stubborn and raised the baton again. Then the door opened. Deputy Chief Chen Lisan walked in. The officer greeted him casually, like this was routine. Chen Lisan glanced at me and asked if I was cooperating. The officer said my mouth was tough. Chen Lisan told him to leave. Once we were alone, he asked where Yuan Gang was. I said I didn't know. He told me to think carefully before answering again. I started to say, I don't, and he grabbed my arm and pressed his thumb directly into my wound. The stitches popped. Blood soaked through the bandage and onto his finger. He asked again. I headbutt him in the nose. Blood poured down his face. His eyes watered. He grabbed a police baton from the wall and beat me until I blacked out. The last thing I felt was a baton cracking across my forehead. I woke up in a hospital. White walls again. My arm had been restitched, my head was bandaged, and my ribs ached. Before I could look around, the door opened and Chen Lisan walked in. He asked if I was ready to talk now. I smiled and told him to go to hell. He leaned over and pressed his palm against my ribs. The pain was blinding. Then a voice came from the doorway. Chun. Chun Lisan turned around, surprised. It was Zhang Wenfu, the actual chief of the Yang'an Police Bureau, Chun Lisan's boss. Zhang told him to step outside. They left together. Half an hour later, they came back. Chun Lisan's face was dark, but he said nothing. Zhang Wenfu walked to my bed with a smile. He asked if my name was Yufei. I nodded. Then he said something that made no sense. He said there'd been a misunderstanding between me and Chun Lisan, and he hoped I wouldn't hold it against anyone. Before I could process that, footsteps pounded down the hallway, and Yuan Gang burst through the door with Peng Yu and Jiang Xin behind him. He called my name. I stared at him, not believing he was real. I called him brother. Then my brain caught up. There were police in this room. I screamed at him to run. He didn't move. He walked to my bed, tears already falling, and hugged me. He said he was sorry I'd suffered. Then Zhang Wenfu stepped forward, smiling, and introduced himself to Yuan Gang. They shook hands. Yuan Gang asked, in a calm, steady voice, how his brother had ended up with these injuries. Zhang Wenfu told him to let bygones be bygones. He said it was all a misunderstanding, and since Yuan Gang was going to be doing business in Yang'an, they should all be friends. Yuan Gang's face flickered with something sharp, but he swallowed it. He said Zhang Wenfu was right, and that his own perspective had been too narrow. Zhang Wenfu nodded, satisfied. He said he had a meeting at the station and left, taking Chun Lisan with him. I asked Yuan Gang what had just happened. He turned to me and sighed. He said he was sorry. I told him to stop apologizing. I didn't know the details yet, but I could see the result. We weren't hiding anymore, and I wasn't going to prison. Whatever Lin Sudong had done while he was away, it had worked. He'd gone above the local police, found someone bigger, and pulled the right strings. The nightmare with Yang'an's police bureau was over. I learned the full story later, piece by piece. The night I was captured, Yuan Gang beat Li Erpi half to death. Then he called Lin Sudong, who'd been out working contacts for days. Lin Sudong said he'd made contact with someone important, but the person's appetite was big, meaning they wanted a lot of money. Yuan Gang told him to pay whatever it took, even if it was 500,000 or 1,000,000. Lin Sudong thought he'd lost his mind. Then Yuan Gang told him I'd been arrested. Lin Sudong went quiet. He said nothing could happen until morning and told Yuan Gang to sit tight. 2 days later, while I was lying unconscious in the hospital after Chun Lisan's beating, a phone rang in the Yang'an Police Bureau Chief's office. Zhang Wenfu picked up. On the other end was Su Mingqiang, the Political and Legal Affairs Committee Secretary of Jiangbei City. That was several levels above anything in Yang'an. Su Mingqiang kept it casual at first, asking about the commotion in Yang'an lately. Zhang Wenfu tried to play it off, just catching some criminals, nothing special. But then Su Mingqiang's tone sharpened. He said law enforcement had to investigate facts properly and not confuse right and wrong. The message was crystal clear. Zhang Wenfu broke into a cold sweat. He hung up, cursed Chun Lisan's name, and rushed to the hospital. That's when he walked into my room, smiled at me, called the whole thing a misunderstanding, and then Yuan Gang came bursting through the door. Lin Sudong had done it. He'd gone above Yang'an entirely, straight to the city's political legal chief. The same way Fifth Master once had Secretary Lin in Jingzhou, we now had a line to Su Mingqiang in Jiangbei. After everything was explained to me, Yuan Gang promised he'd make Chun Lisan pay someday. I told him to forget it. He changed the subject, said our good days were coming. Over the next weeks, Yuan Gang stayed with me at the hospital, then Peng Yu and Jiang Xian rotated in. The karaoke lounge started renovations. Lin Sudong and Li Wenqi visited once, but left again soon. They were still working. After more than 2 weeks, my wounds healed up enough. Only the broken ribs still needed time. I was bored out of my mind and begged to leave. Yuan Gang gave in. He'd rented a 3-bedroom apartment across from the lounge on East Street. He got 1 room, I got 1, and Peng Yu and Jiang Xian shared the 3rd. One morning, Yuan Gang barged into my room, pulled off my blanket, and smacked me awake. He said we were going to buy a car. His Santana was still with Lin Sudong, and we couldn't keep taking taxis everywhere. We went to the lounge first, where Peng Yu and Jiang Xian were watching the construction crew. Yuan Gang said he was buying 2 vehicles and needed someone to come along. Peng Yu tried to get out of it. Yuan Gang kicked him twice and said the second vehicle was a van for hauling supplies, not a gift for Peng Yu. Jiang Xin volunteered, and the three of us headed to the biggest car dealer in Yang'an. We went to Yubao Car Dealership, the biggest one in Yang'an. It was run by two brothers, Chen Yu and Chen Bao. A young salesman greeted us, and Yuan Gang told him he wanted a Santana. The guy led us straight to the last one they had. Yuan Gang opened the door, checked the interior, and said he'd take it. Just give us the lowest price, and we'd drive it out today. The salesman couldn't believe how fast it was happening. Yuan Gang also asked about a used van. Chen Bao said they had over a dozen outside and would show us later. They were sizing us up. Anyone buying a Santana with cash wasn't ordinary, but they couldn't figure out who we were. We'd just agreed on the price when the office door slammed open. A greasy, pot-bellied man in his 40s walked in like he owned the place. He called the brothers by their first names and announced he was here to pick up his car. Chen Bao told him he was too late. The Santana was already sold. The man, Huang San'er, real name Huang Jiqiang, looked at us and said nobody in Yang'an dared take anything from him. Chen Yu slapped the table and cursed him out. Huang San'er ignored him, pulled out his phone, and asked Yuan Gang his name while starting to dial. Yuan Gang smiled and leaned back on the sofa. He said his name was Yuan Gang. I didn't even bother looking up. I was flipping through a car magazine. Jiang Xian sighed at both of us and quietly pulled out his own phone to make a call. Huang San'er mocked Yuan Gang's name and said he wasn't leaving this dealership with that car, not without Huang Jiqiang's permission. Yuan Gang stood up slowly, poked the man in the chest, and told him he'd be driving the car out today, and Huang San'er would be bowing and waving goodbye while he did it. Huang San'er raised his hand to slap Yuan Gang. I was already moving. I grabbed the glass ashtray off the table and smashed it over his head. It shattered. He hit the floor screaming, blood running through his fingers. Yuan Gang didn't even look at him. He grabbed my hand and checked if I'd cut myself. Chen Bao's eyes went wide. Chen Yu, though, he just smiled. He'd been frowning before, but now he looked entertained. Chen Bao whispered to his brother, asking what he was smiling about. Huang San'er ran a pool hall and had real people behind him. Getting beaten in their shop meant trouble was coming for everyone. Chen Yu just said to sit back and enjoy the show. Sure enough, about a dozen guys came storming into the dealership minutes later. The leader, a young guy in a black jacket, saw Huang San'er covered in blood and yelled his name. Huang San'er pointed at us and screamed for them to kill us. They were about to charge when 7 or 8 taxis screeched to a halt outside. 20-something guys poured out with steel pipes and cleavers. A chubby kid named Xiao Yuan led the way. He walked in and called out, "Brother Gang." Everyone behind him did the same, 30 voices at once. Huang San'er's crew froze. Yuan Gang smiled at Huang San'er and asked if he wanted to test his luck against our people. It wasn't even close. Our guys looked like they ate people for breakfast, while Huang San'er's crew looked like they'd wandered in from a schoolyard. Chen Bao was stunned. Chen Yu just kept smiling, like he'd expected this all along. Huang San'er couldn't get a word out. Yuan Gang stepped forward and asked if he could drive the car away now. Huang San'er nodded. Yuan Gang asked if he was still going to call him Water Tank. Huang San'er shook his head so fast blood went flying from his wound. Yuan Gang patted Huang San'er's cheek and told him to remember the name Yuan Gang. He said he'd taken over the old Jianghe restaurant on East Street, and if Huang San'er ever needed to find him, that's where he'd be. Huang San'er nodded like an obedient child. Jiang Xian and I almost laughed. Yuan Gang turned back to Chen Bao like nothing had happened and said we should finish the car deal. We paid, did the paperwork, and drove away, the Santana plus a van. After we left, Chen Yu told his brother that Yuan Gang was the same man who'd taken on Li Erpi and survived the entire Yang'an Police Bureau coming after him. Chen Bao's eyes went wide. Chen Yu said Yang'an was about to change. Back home, I wanted to sleep, but Yuan Gang insisted on teaching me to drive. He found an empty lot, explained the clutch, the gears, the gas, and the brake, then let me try. I hit the gas too hard. The brand new Santana launched forward like a rocket. Yuan Gang grabbed his seat, face going white. But I loved it. I stomped the accelerator and tore around the lot, ignoring Yuan Gang screaming at me to slow down. After half an hour, I stepped out feeling great. Yuan Gang didn't move. He called out weakly and asked me to help him out of the car. His face was pale. I asked if he was sick. He looked at me, opened his mouth to answer, and threw up. On the way home, he drove in silence with a black expression. I sat in the back, sneaking nervous glances at the rearview mirror. When we got in, Peng Yu said dinner was almost ready. Yuan Gang looked at the food. His stomach turned again, and he ran to his room. Peng Yu asked what happened. Before I could explain, Yuan Gang's door flew open. He pointed at Peng Yu and said, "Dead serious. Never let Yufei drive a car. Not even touch the steering wheel." Then he slammed the door shut. Peng Yu and Jiang Xian both stared at me. I smiled awkwardly and said I was hungry. Nobody asked anything else.